Do you find yourself searching for a quiet space for your mind? Whether you wish to drift into a gentle slumber or cultivate effortless focus, let us step together into a Zen story, where each breath, each sound, gently carries you back to your inherent peace. Story 1: The moonlight on the pond. That night, as a slender breeze, like a slip of silk, passed through the stone garden, the young novice monk carried a basin of water to the pond's edge to wash freshly dried bowls. The water in the basin quivered, breaking into countless sparkling lines as if someone had sprinkled silver salt upon its surface. When he lifted his gaze, he saw the full moon resting motionless on the pond's surface, so perfectly round that one felt they might simply bend over. Reach a few fingers down, just tiptoe, and lift the moon into the palm of their hand, warm as a ripe orange. That gentle thought clung to him. Bowing, he stretched out his arms. His fingers touched the water, and the cold made his skin contract slightly. The pond trembled, and the moon shattered into fragments. Like a mirror tapped, its light scattered into scales of shimmering silver. Alarmed, the novice hurriedly tried to scoop them up, but the harder he tried, the more the fragments dispersed, like a frightened bird diving down only to shoot away again. When the wooden clogs of the teacher sounded softly on the gravel path, deliberate and clear, the pond was a tangled web of ripples, and the water in his basin had also grown cloudy from the waves he himself had stirred. The teacher stood beside him for a while without speaking, watching the broken moonlight slowly rejoin. Then, with a voice so quiet one might miss it if they were not still, he asked, "What were you trying to scoop up?" The novice flushed and stammered, "I wanted to scoop up the moon." The teacher nodded as if hearing something ordinary. He picked up a pebble from the garden and dropped it lightly into the basin. Ripples spread, and the moon fragments in the water were cut apart once again. "Do you see?" the teacher said. "The moon never fell into the basin. It is the water that trembles. Peace is never lost in the world. Only your mind becomes disturbed." The novice fell silent, eyes following the gentle fading of the ripples. As the water smoothed once more, and the lines of light slowly reconnected into a whole, perfect circle, the teacher sat down on the stone step, placing his hand on the rim of the basin as one might rest upon a breath, and said, "When you chase the moonlight, you lose the water. Likewise, when you chase focus or sleep, you lose your breath. Do the opposite." He offered no further explanation, simply inviting the novice to sit in stillness, his spine straight as bamboo, his chin dropped softly like a raindrop, his eyes half closed to hold onto a single thread of light, and his lips lightly sealed, as if gently smiling at himself. The breeze passed across the pond. A thin cloud drifted across the moon. Crickets in the grass ticked like an antique clock. Yet everything seemed to slow down when the novice placed his entire body and mind on a single task: to feel his own belly rising with each inhale, and falling with each exhale. The teacher whispered softly, like an unrhymed mantra, "Inhale, knowing you are inhaling. Exhale, knowing you are exhaling. When knowing is enough, you need nothing else." In those first minutes, the novice became aware of countless things he hadn't before: the sound of the teacher's brown robe brushing against stone, the damp scent of moss, the coolness at the tips of his fingers, his heartbeat quickening then settling. Then, after a time, All that remained was a single motion, rising and falling, like a boat without oars drifting in a silent cove, no waves, no wind, and no need to dock. Suddenly, he recalled the earlier movement. The harder he chased, the more the moon shattered, the more he sought sleep. The more wakeful he became, the more he forced concentration. The more scattered his thoughts became. The mind is like water, it cannot be stilled by command. Only by laying the hand down that is stirring it. The teacher said, if you hear the wind, don't call it noisy. If you hear a thought, don't call it bothersome. Just notice, this is wind. This is a thought. And return to the one who knows, who is never noisy. The novice tried, letting thoughts pass by like dry leaves, untagged, uncounted, then returned to the gentle warmth at the tip of his nose when air passed in, cooled as it flowed out. After a while, the pond before him was smooth, like black silk, the moon lying so still one could almost believe it had never broken. The novice suddenly discerned the difference between two similar actions: to scoop up the moon, and to look at the moon. The first involved hands, haste, grasping. The other simply required stillness. You look. You know. The teacher gently tapped the rim of the basin. A small sound like a droplet falling. When you want to sleep, don't try to sleep. You only sleep when there is nothing left to do. Breath is the last task. It is so simple you cannot add to it. If one lies in bed, the teacher invited them to shift so their spine was released like a bow's string loosening. Shoulders softened, face straightened as if someone smoothed from brow to chin, and legs growing heavy as two warm stones. If one was intent on work, he invited them to plant their feet like stakes in the ground. Hands relaxed without dropping, gaze resting naturally on one point, following one breath, one line, one phrase, as if walking a path just wide enough for you. The novice looked back at the pond. The moon remained, but he no longer wished to lift it, realizing that the most important thing was not to bring the moon back, but to not disturb the water. When the water is still, the moon becomes whole. When the mind is still, sleep comes on its own. When the mind is still, focus appears effortlessly. The teacher's words tied everything together like a perfect knot, holding all things intact. Later in the night, as the chill of dew began to settle, the novice bent to lift the basin of bowls. The water reflected a perfect, unmarred circle. He walked slowly to avoid causing any ripples, as if understanding why people do not walk heavily at night, not out of fear of waking others, but out of fear of waking the water inside themselves. As he reached the steps, the teacher stood and brushed off dust from his robe, speaking in a parting tone. Tomorrow, when you feel anxious, remember this basin. When you feel the urge to scoop up the moon, place your hand on your belly and feel it rise and fall. When thoughts arise, whisper to yourself, thought, and then let go. The wooden clogs sounded again on the gravel path as the teacher returned to the room. The novice stood a moment longer, simply gazing at the still moon, and in that stillness, something slowly opened within him, like a door without hinges or sound, just a space wide enough for one to step through and gently close behind with a long, soft breath. Story 3: The Broken Bell. One misty morning, the temple courtyard still held the dampness of the night. The young novice hurried toward the bell tower when he heard the caretaker lament that the bronze bell had cracked. Indeed, A fine hairline fissure ran from the bell's rim down near the character, meaning still. So delicate it seemed like eggshell, but enough to mar the bell's tone. When struck, it no longer rang full and round, but produced a warped sound, trailing off at the tail like the voice of someone just recovering from illness. The novice panicked, immediately thinking he must fix, weld, restore it to how it was, perfect, as he had always been taught. The teacher arrived, dust still clinging to his wooden veranda. He didn't scold. He simply handed the novice a wooden mallet and told him to strike the bell as he always did. The bell rang. The initial tone came out round, then hit the crack and shattered into a cascade of notes in varying lengths. Its tail quivered like a fish escaping a net, not aesthetically pleasing by familiar standards, but strangely drawing the listener inward to a place deeper within, where the silence that followed the ring became not an empty void, but a path. Listen to the tail, the teacher whispered. Don't only hear the head of the sound. The novice tried, and discovered that the broken bell's tail had layers, a high, fine layer like a wisp of smoke, a warm, low layer like the earth, and a tiny, grain-like layer, like raindrops tapping leaves. These layers stacked, then faded one by one like lamps being turned off in a long house. Do you see? The teacher asked. It is like thought. It arises, the head of the sound, resonates, its body, and then dissolves, the tail. Left to itself, it knows how to depart. The teacher told the novice to strike again, this time softly, then harder, then in different places. From that, the novice learned a simple truth, even cracked. The bell remains a bell, and it is the crack that compels the listener to follow the sound to its very end. This imperfection awakens us. It keeps us from dozing through a sound that is too smooth. Your mind is the same, the teacher said. Demanding perfection is the fastest way to break it. Use the crack as your support. The novice asked how. The teacher smiled, guided him to sit on a stone step, posture straight like bamboo, shoulders dropping like dry robes, eyes half closed to hold a thin thread of light. When you hear the bell, focus your attention fully on the three parts: head, body, tail. Inhale, knowing the head has struck. Exhale, following as the tail fades. When the tail disappears, do not rush to chase a new sound. Stay one more heartbeat in that silence. That is the gate to peace. The novice did, striking 1, 2, 3 times and noticing in each interval a space like water unruffled. In that space, breath lengthened on its own, heartbeat steadied, thoughts curled up like bored kittens and dropped off to sleep. If you struggled to sleep at night, the teacher continued, imagine the sound of the bell in your mind. No mallet needed. Simply repeat, bell, listening for its imagined tail to fade into stillness. With each repetition, exhale a bit longer. 10 repetitions are enough to make your eyelids heavy like 2 warm pebbles. And during the day when you need focus, the teacher said, turn the bell into a rhythm of work. 25 minutes, bell, 5 minutes, silence. During the bell period, focus on a single task as if striking at one fixed point. When done, set down your pen like laying down the mallet. Let the tail of the task fully finish. Then strike into the next. A skilled person, he said, does not work faster, they complete each close and open fully. The novice looked at the crack. unconsciously touching its surface, cool and rough like the bank of a stream. The teacher added, "The crack is not a flaw, it is the bell's biography." Similarly, fatigue, sadness, hesitation, these are the mind's biography. Read them to understand, not to condemn. Then the teacher made a game. He asked the novice to count the heartbeats that fit into the bell's tail. The novice placed his hand on his chest. 1, 2, 3. The tail faded at the 8th heartbeat. On the next ring, he placed his hand on his belly, counting exhalations. 1 full breath. 2. The tail ended on the 3rd. In a few rounds, breath and sound fell into alignment like 2 gears meshed. Bell rings. Breath in. Tail fades. Breath out. Between strikes, silence stands. "You have just learned a technique," the teacher said. "Call it locking breath into tone. It works with any sound, fan, rain, keystrokes. At night, open to all imagery to sleep. By day, pick one sound as your anchor." He also shared a trick for when thoughts get too noisy. Softly hum in the throat like a bee buzzing. Letting the chest gently vibrate to turn your body into a hollow bell. That vibration draws the nervous system from head to chest, concentrating awareness in one place. Like water gathering into a hollow. 1 minute quiets the flickering flame of scattered tasks. The novice tried. The was so soft only he could hear it. Yet his chest felt warm as embers. His head light as though a tangled knot had been untied. A laywoman happened by and asked to strike the bell for blessings. The teacher handed her the mallet and said, "Strike lightly. For a long tail." She struck, and the sound of a stranger's bell revealed a new layer. Each person strikes, and the bell responds with a unique voice. As the mind meets life, life replies with color. That difference is not a flaw, it is life. When sunlight rose above the roof and the courtyard's dew withdrew, the crack remained there, a seam not needing to be hidden. But the bell's sound no longer struck unauthorized to the novice. It became a second teacher, reminding him of the natural order of all tasks. Arise, abide, dissolve, do, rest, do, inhale, exhale, stand. If this afternoon you feel agitated, the teacher concluded firmly, don't hunt for perfection. Strike one note, even a broken bell in your head, and follow its tail until it fades. In that fading, everything finds its place. As the teacher turned away, the novice stayed a moment longer, lifting the mallet and striking softly. The sound rose like a ring of light, drawing him along its arc. When it finally died away, he realized he was smiling, not because the bell had been repaired, but because his mind no longer needed the bell to be whole to be at peace. Story 5. The candle in the night. Night fell, and all lights in the meditation hall were extinguished, leaving only a small candle placed in the center of the room like a fallen star that landed on the wooden roof. A gentle breeze rustled the bamboo screen outside, like someone exhaling softly behind a door, causing the flame to flicker, not wholly still but trembling like a heartbeat with a story to tell. The young novice carried in a teapot of warm water and set it aside, then sat before the candle at an arm and a half's distance, close enough to see the thin, black wick rising like a brush stroke, yet far enough that the light did not glare. In that moment, he understood why his teacher said today would be learning with fire. Everything else had been taught through water, the pond, wind, the bamboo grove; metal, the bell; and tea, the full cup. Fire is thin yet resilient, both alive and able to pause, a teacher that speaks in the tiniest of vibrations. The teacher sat to one side, offering no long lecture, only saying, "There are two paths to walk with fire. One path brings alertness, eyes at a point. The other brings sleep, eyes over a field. You may choose either to practice." He motioned for the novice to sit with back straight like an arrow laid down. Chin dropping, shoulders releasing, hands resting one atop the other like leaves floating on water. "Now, look at the base of the flame, where it is born from the wick," he said softly, "not the tip, which dances easily. Look at the base because it changes least. Inhale, knowing you are looking. Exhale, knowing you are looking. Whenever your eyes want to wander left or right, smile, guiding them back like returning a child to bed." In that moment, the room transformed into an hourglass. In the upper half, thoughts fell; in the lower, a tiny aperture where the flame's light passed. Each thought had to filter through as individual grains, not pouring in all at once. At first, the novice counted the minute wonders in the flame he had never noticed before. A thin blue halo around the base like a garment's edge, above which was bright yellow, and higher still a pale bluish white like the fragile chime of a bell. Sometimes the flame tilted as if bowing, then sprang upward again as if remembering something important. These subtle details anchored his eyes like an anchor holds a ship in place. The teacher said, "Do not blink too long. When your eyes dry, blink once, think, blink, and return. 5 breaths make one rhythm. 3 of those rhythms are enough to unlock focus. If you must work, after 3 rhythms, blow out the candle. Close your eyes for 10 seconds, holding the image of the flame imprinted on your eyelids. Then open your notebook and do exactly one thing." The novice did, and experienced something strange, even after the candle was extinguished. Within his eyes remained a faint flicker like a luminous flower floating in the dark, a candle inside. If he held that flower on a line of text, a math problem, or an idea, the outside sounds retreated like a tide, revealing a smooth expanse of mind without footprints. That is the path of fire for alertness. Narrow your field of vision to a point. Close off wandering paths. When awake enough, you don't need the candle anymore. Just the image in your eyes and the rhythm of your breath within your chest. The teacher explained. He then shifted to the second exercise. When you wish to sleep, don't look at the base of the flame, and don't frame it. Look around. Look at the light the candle spreads across the walls, floor, and air, as if you were looking at a colored mist. Let your eyes soften like water, without holding onto anything. Inhale, knowing the glow is expanding slightly. Exhale, knowing it thins. Occasionally, you may close your eyes and light the candle within, not as a sharp point of brightness but as a soft, round glow without edges. 30 breaths that way will weigh down your eyelids like 2 warm stones. The novice tried, and found the golden warmth on the wall transformed from light into warmth, a warmth not touching his skin, but touching something between his eyes and his heart. When his eyes widened to focus, boundaries arose. When his eyes softened to sleep, boundaries melted like wax. The teacher added a practical tip. If you use a real candle, always place it on a plate. away from anything flammable. Never let the candle burn when you're already in bed. If you want to sleep, use an imagined candle. Extinguish the real one. Turn off the lights. Lie on your side, and place that soft glow behind your forehead. With each exhale, imagine someone turning that light down one notch. After 10 notches, the room in your mind will be as calm as the bottom of a still pond. To help the novice feel the fluidity of fire, the teacher performed a small demonstration. He took a slip of white paper, placed it to block half of the flame so that only a narrow beam of light remained. Instantly, the room's character changed, as if someone had drawn a curtain. The insects outside the window sounded the same, but it felt different. He said, "Life will do that sometimes. One notification lights up, one email jumps in, one voice calls, and your mind's light is obscured. If you need focus, cover the other rays by ritual. Silence notifications. Keep your phone behind you. Write down your 25-minute goal. And light the candle in your eyes. If you need sleep, don't block, dilute the light. Widen your hearing. Widen your view. Let everything blend into a pale, hard-to-name golden hue. Dilution is the art of sleep." The novice nodded, remembering nights before exams when he'd study under bright lights, eyes clamping down until they dried, mind frayed like an over-tightened string. If someone had taught him this candle, point, field method then, he would not have struggled so long. The teacher seemed to sense this. Smiling, "Do not blame old nights. Every night is new. Fire only teaches the one who sits before it." Then he offered a brief pocket guide, like a chant, to stay awake. Sit, light candle. See the base of the flame, 5 breaths. Hold the image of the flame with eyes closed. Work 25 minutes. Rest 5 minutes. Repeat 3 times. To sleep. Extinguish candle. Lie down. Place breath glow behind the forehead. Exhale. Dim the glow. Count down from 30 to 0 if you miscount. Smile and continue. He added, "Fire has 2 natures, brightening and nurturing. Brightening is for work. Nurturing is for rest. Do not use brightening when you need sleep. And do not bring nurturing when you need to focus. Your job is to distinguish between these 2 states in your day and choose the rightful flame." Then he placed a small lid over the candle. The flame was stifled with a soft poof, leaving a light sweetness of wax in the air, not threatening darkness, but a darkness that kindles another light, the presence of breath. The novice realized that from beginning to end, the candle was merely a reason to look, looking at a point to untangle, looking at a field to dissolve. Peace, as it had always been, lay in the natural rhythm of his inhale and exhale. When he rose to stack the teapot, arrange the chair, draw the bamboo screen, he walked across the dark courtyard carrying an extinguished candle, not burning with wax, but glowing with awareness, not dazzling, but enough to light a path just right for one person to return to their room. Close the door, rest the blanket on their chest, smile, and let the night complete its own work. Story 6: The Potter and the Cracked Vase. Morning mist draped the riverbank like a thin layer of glaze. An elderly potter carried a shoulder pole on one end, a brand new vase, its belly round, lip ivory colored, its tone, when tapped, like a jade bead, on the other end. An older vase, its body marked by a fine crack extending from shoulder to belly. leaking a droplet of water with each step that darkened the ground below. The young novice walked beside him, uneasy. "Why don't you replace the cracked one?" he asked. "It wastes water and looks ugly." The potter did not rush. He set down his pole beneath a kapok tree and gently traced the cracked vase as if comforting a familiar creature, whispering softly so only the breeze could hear. "If you only look at the drip, you'll miss the green trail." Following his hand, the novice saw a ribbon of low plants lining the path beside the cracked vase: carnations, mint bushes, daisies, damp with morning light. The potter explained, "The crack has watered this path for months. Every morning I sowed a few seeds. Every afternoon, the sun did the rest. The unbroken vase waters the destination. The cracked one waters the journey." They continued. The new vase brimmed like a promise. The cracked one emptied but painted color along the way. At the temple courtyard, the potter placed both vases in a stone basin, scooped a ladle of water for the novice. It flowed cool and wordless down his throat, then began his story. "When I was young, I hated cracks. I'd glaze thicker, fire longer, shape more arduously, but that made many vases shatter in the kiln from that excessive perfection. One night, my teacher placed a shard in my hand and said, 'Work by the voice of the clay, not by pride.' Since then, I learned to speak with fire using the crack. A small crack tells me when to ease the heat. A long one signals me to slow the rotation. Cracks became messages. I learned to read my own vases." The novice bent to study the crack, its edges smoothened by time. Cool beneath his finger as a dried riverbed. The potter lifted the cracked vase gently. The last droplet fell on stone with a soft tap. Like a drum beat. Have you ever noticed your mind is like this vase? Carrying a task and suddenly leaking a different thought? He asked. The novice sighed and admitted with a shy smile. "Every day." The potter nodded. "Then let us learn to turn the drip into a green trail. Rather than bashing the vase apart." He taught the novice a focused exercise that felt like a game but was truly mindfulness in action. Place a blank sheet before you and draw a delicate curve from left to right, the crack line, for 20 to 25 minutes. Write a single task along that curve. When a stray thought drips in, a notification, a memory, a worry, don't resist. Mark a tiny dot on the curve's edge, and return to writing. When time's up, count the dots to know how many drips leaked. Do not erase the dots. He said, "You've planted small notes, things to do tomorrow. Names of thoughts to let rest." After a few days, the number of dots didn't vanish, but the work flowed smoother. Like the whole vase. And those dots, those fallen drops, watered neat margin notes. Like a row of mint along a path. That is concentration, the potter concluded, complete with each stream you pour, gentle with every drop you let fall. He then showed how to sleep using that cracked vase. Before bed, imagine carrying it from the riverside. Each step releases a drop. Lie on your side, left hand on the belly to feel each step. Count backward from 60. Every number is a tap on stone. Let the tap dissolve into silence before the next. If you lose count, smile, like stepping on wet grass, and carry on. This is not a test. At drop 20, stop counting and notice the drops become mist enveloping your skin. Your tongue softens, jaw loosens, eyes settle like earth after rain. Sleep arrives, he said, when you stop expecting to carry perfect water all the way, and let it fall along the way. The novice tested this on a midday rest. He counted the first 15 drops. The next 15 became breath. He awoke at dawn refreshed, mind as light as if dust had been wiped away. The potter dried the cracked vase, sunlight catching along the crack like a silver thread. Then said something many forget. Don't patch cracks with anger, if you scold them. They widen, repair with gold, as the Japanese do. That's beautiful, but we have dawn's light. Whenever you feel imperfect, a missed line, a scattered day, take it into the sun. Rewrite the line you meant to say. Rearrange your day. The crack won't vanish, but it becomes the channel where your path flowers. Only then did the novice understand why the perfect vase rode toward the courtyard while the cracked one traveled on the edge. Parts of life are born to arrive. Parts are born to water the journey. He asked to carry the pole himself. The weight, he discovered, wasn't in the water, it was in the rhythm of carrying it poorly. The potter taught him. Step, pause, breathe, step, pause, breathe. Every 5 steps, pause half a breath. Like a kiln's slow cooling. Work the same. 25 minutes of fire, 5 minutes of subsiding. Sleep, 2. 30 drops with rhythm. Then stop counting. As they exited the temple gate, bamboo whispers seemed to say farewell. The potter looked back and fixed the novice with a final word. Like sealing glaze inside clay, do not judge the crack. Read it. That afternoon, the novice's pace slowed. On his notebook page appeared his first pencil curve, thin as a fissure, next to it. A strand of faint green script. From that day, whenever his mind dripped, he no longer panicked but sowed a seed quietly, and stepped forward, knowing that the fairest things grow not at the end, but along paths watered by drops that once made him anxious. Story 7. The last leaf on the temple roof. Evening fell slowly, like a quietly uttered verse. Autumn's breeze crept along the moss-covered tiles of the temple roof, nudging the very last leaf, perched precariously on the edge, into a pale yellow exclamation mark against the gray sky. The young novice, who had just finished sweeping the courtyard, looked up and felt a subtle fear stir within him. If that leaf fell, would the season fall too? Would those gentle evenings close like an automatic door? And where would the peace he had grown accustomed to retreat? He stood motionless for so long that the broom handle left a faint shadow on the tile floor. His eyes remained fixed on the leaf's trembling edge, quivering like an eyelid about to close. The teacher walked by and followed the gaze of the novice. Without speaking, he placed his hand on the broom handle alongside the boy's, pausing a breath in shared stillness. Then he released it like setting a small fish free into the water. Finally, he asked quietly, so gently the wind would struggle to carry the words away. Do you want to hold onto the leaf? Or hold onto your peace? The novice faltered. If the leaf falls, I'm afraid the season is over. I fear I will feel empty inside. The teacher smiled and picked up 2 slender bamboo twigs. He handed one to the novice. Hold them like this, he said. Raise them to frame the sky, creating a small window just big enough for that leaf. Look only into that frame. The novice did as instructed. The 2 twigs formed a tiny square frame, enclosing the leaf. Everything else seemed to fade into a blur beyond its borders. Now, The teacher instructed. Watch the number of times the leaf trembles. Each tremble is a breath. Inhale as the leaf tilts right. Exhale as it tilts left. Don't judge it. Don't expect it to hold still. Just count and remain. The boy counted each tremor, at first full of anxiety. Each one felt like a threat of falling. But after 10 breaths, then 20, the rhythm of tremors turned into a dance. His eyes stopped seeking an ending and settled simply in the flow. Do you see? The teacher said. When you frame your view, your mind stops trying to encompass the whole sky. Peace isn't in the leaf not falling, but in how you watch. The teacher lowered the bamboo frame, widening the boy's gaze. He invited the novice to see the entire roof, the sky, the thin cloud drifting like chalk across the horizon. And when you open your view, the teacher continued, one leaf no longer holds your mind hostage. These are two ways of being. When you need focus, frame small. When you need rest, expand. Don't use the wrong mode for the season. He didn't catch the leaf, didn't scale the roof. Instead, he taught a simple ritual as light as martial arts. When studying or working, choose one leaf, a single line, a number, a phrase, and frame it with your hands or mind. When a distracting thought surfaces, don't chase it, just whisper, leaf falling, and return your eyes to the framed leaf. 15 to 25 minutes is a small season. When it ends, set down your pen, breathe deeply, shift your posture, let your eyes expand, and that's when you collect the leaves in your journal. Jot down 2 or 3 thoughts that fell so they don't linger like loose leaves in your mind. Then begin a new season with a fresh leaf, or the same one. The novice tried immediately. He held his fingers as a little viewfinder over a line of writing in his notebook and silently affirmed, "This is my leaf." And somehow the voices of passers-by, the chirp of evening birds, the faint sound of someone walking away on gravel became background mist. Then the teacher spoke of sleep, not in riddles, but simply, don't frame before you sleep. Allow your field of vision to widen to fill the room. Lie on your side, hand on your belly to sense the wind within you. Imagine that leaf slowly spiraling down, not falling, but swirling. One exhale equals one swirl, counting down from 30 to 0. At 20, let your tongue release from the roof of your mouth. Jaw parted just enough that breath doesn't touch. At 10, your shoulders relax like soft wax. At 5, place the leaf in your palm. Feel its imagined weight. At 0, open your hand, let the leaf touch the ground, and stop counting. The novice listened, feeling as if someone had gently lubricated the stiff gears inside him. If at 10 your eyes aren't heavy, the teacher added, don't force fix it. Instead, gather the leaves. Ritual before sleep. Write 3 things for tomorrow. Underline one most important. Close your notebook. The brain loves a properly closed circle. Let it close so the night can be fully dark. The novice nodded, aware of how many nights he'd stayed awake because there were leaves he hadn't gathered, unanswered texts, unfinished phrases, unnamed worries. A breeze strengthened. The last leaf on the roof traced a gentle arc, then paused on the tile like an actor holding a final pose. The novice instinctively held his breath and gripped the broom handle. The teacher touched his wrist and reminded him, don't resist the wind. Wind has its purpose. Your job is to breathe. He exhaled longer than usual, and suddenly heard the silence in the space between 2 gusts. He realized his fear was like trying to stop the season by clamping down on the wind, both exhausting and futile. When you try to keep everything from falling, the teacher said, your body shrinks. Both focus and sleep hate tension. You need firmness that's soft and softness that's spacious. He shared how, in his youth, he once hung a thread from the roof with a grain of rice at the end, as a gauge for the wind. Instead of blocking the wind, he learned to read it. On windy days, pick heavy work. On gentle days, soft tasks. On chaotic nights, open your listening wide and dilute sound. Like we expanded your gaze so one leaf doesn't fill the whole sky. The novice smiled, realizing a vital truth he had forgotten. Peace doesn't mean nothing happens, but that one thing doesn't overshadow everything else. Eventually, the leaf did fall, not dramatically, and without a sound, just a slender arc like handwriting in the wind, touching the courtyard floor in a near silence. The novice bent and picked it up. It felt weightless, almost like retrieving a memory. His heart did not leap in alarm, instead, it felt a perfect closing, like finishing a letter. The teacher said, the leaf didn't carry the season away, it returned the season to the root. And you, too, your day falls into night. Tasks fall onto the page. Breath returns to breath. What matters isn't what stays on the roof, but how you place your gaze and your heart. He set the leaf on the edge of a vegetable patch and gently swept soil over half of it, like planting a word into the earth. Tomorrow, he said, a blade of grass will sprout here. Seasons don't vanish, they transform. Then he gave the novice a small slip of paper with 4 lines written like the rhythm of a falling leaf. Frame small. Do one thing. Rest short. Gather the leaves. Open wide. Dilute the sounds. Fall fully. Let night be whole. Reading it, the novice felt his life has drawers again. The courtyard sky above seemed wider, not because a leaf had dropped, but because the grip had loosened. Entering his room, he aligned the broom, performed the leaf fall ritual, lying on his side, hand on belly, counting down as the leaf spiraled. By 20 his eyelids were heavy like warm stones. By 10 a gentle darkness opened. At 0 the leaf touched down in silence. And in that instant, he heard what the teacher had said from the start, but only now really heard. Peace never left. It seated at the threshold, patiently waiting for someone to stop gripping, stop holding, stop naming, until they simply watch a leaf fall and do nothing else. Story 8: The Lotus in the Mud. At dawn, mist lay over the low fields like a frosted pane, turning the temple pond brownish and murky. The water's surface was dotted with muddy foam and decaying leaves, like a page drenched in ink. The young novice, who preferred cleanliness, stood at a distance, wrinkling his nose. It's so dirty. How can one be here? He thought. The teacher didn't answer right away. Instead, he rolled up his trousers and waded into the shallow mud. His toes sank into the thick ooze as if reaching into an uncomfortable memory. Gently, he parted the green leaves to reveal a closed lotus bud, its tip dusted with bits of mud that still glowed with cool calmness. "See this," the teacher said. "Mud doesn't resist the lotus, it nourishes it. Like fatigue, noise, and the sticky emotions of a long day, if you know how to stand properly. They become nutrients." Still doubtful, the novice hesitated, but the teacher invited, "Come down. Let us learn a lesson." breathing with the mud. His voice was as calm as an undisturbed pond. Cautiously, the boy stepped in. The mud enveloped his ankles. Cold at first, then warming, both unpleasant and oddly grounding, much like the unresolved thoughts that cling to his mind each evening. The teacher guided. As you inhale, silently say, mud. As you exhale, say, lotus. Not to drive the mud away, but to remember that the lotus already lives within the mud. The novice did this. His breath was shallow at first, as though afraid of sinking. By the 10th breath, the mud remained, but his aversion to it faded. The vein patterns on the lotus leaf grew clear. A black dragonfly alighted and then fluttered off, leaving ripples that spread like a quiet answer. The teacher snapped off a leaf and held it before the novice's eyes. Focus on nurturing the lotus is like cultivating concentration. There are 3 layers: the mud, the churning thoughts; the water, your breath; the flower, the single task you've chosen. Don't pluck the flower before the mud is settled. Filter in that order. Then he taught a simple yet profound ritual called 3 rounds of filtration. Drain the mud. On the left margin of a sheet, write 5 things troubling you. 1 per line, no explanations. Settle the water, sit upright. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 1. Exhale for 6. Repeat 10 rounds with your gaze softened at a 45 degrees angle. Nurture the flower. Write the 1 task you choose in the center of the page. Box it, and set a 25-minute timer. When a stray thought, mud, arises, gently mark a dot in the left margin and return to your task, no argument. When finished, count the dots to know how muddy your mind was that day, but remember, the mud isn't bad, it means there's matter to filter through. The teacher smiled. A skilled person isn't one without mud, but one who turns mud into lotus. That afternoon the novice practiced. At minute 12, a forgotten message popped up. He marked a dot and returned. At minute 19, he recalled tomorrow's weather, another dot, and returned. By the end, the central task line was neat, and the margin held 4 pollen-like dots. Mud fell. Yet the flower had begun to bloom. Just then, clouds drifted by and wind stirred the pond, muddying it further. The novice frowned. What if the mud gets churned up? The teacher pointed to a bamboo stake fixed in the pond. Then avoid peering into the depths. Look at the post. When waves rise, your anchor is breath or a single cue, like clock ticks, fan hum, or even a word you choose, like ni tu in Vietnamese. On inhale think ni in. Exhale, ni out. Keep to 25 cycles. The waves need not vanish, only that you do not become the wave. He offered another tip for distraction, like notifications or compulsive scrolling. Place your phone face down. Out of reach. Write a short commitment. I will nurture 1 lotus in 25 minutes. Writing it by hand is a tether to the shore. The novice grinned at how awkward it seemed. Yet he wrote it, and while writing, the urge to grab his phone drained away like a stone into mud. That night, the teacher brought the novice by the pond's edge. Frogs' chorus dripped like rain, and the tang of damp earth mingled with blooming jasmine. Sleeping with the lotus is also 3 layers, he said, but in reverse. Widen, soften, then sow the final bud. He introduced the lotus leaf boat lullaby. Lie on your side, hand on belly, imagining you are a lotus leaf carrying your body. Each exhale, the leaf drifts down. Count backward from 30 to 0. 1 drift per number. At 20, let your tongue release. At 10, shoulders melt like wax. At 5, imagine a bud at your forehead, dim, warm. At 0, the bud gently opens and darkness flows in with smooth softness. If you miscount, the teacher encouraged, don't turn back, just keep counting. Sleep isn't a test of memory. For restless nights, he added the lotus scent 4-7-8 rhythm. Inhale through nose for 4 counts as if smelling a lotus. Hold 7 so the scent lingers. Exhale for 8 as if blowing lightly across water. 3 rounds and eyelids feel as heavy as warm stone. The novice tried, noticing this strange truth. When he didn't despise the mud, it receded to become background. When he didn't resist the frog's calls, they became gentle lullabies. Peace wasn't a clean tray, it was a garden where everything finds a place. At dawn, the teacher presented a bowl of lotus seeds. Some were spoiled. Hidden inside, he taught a lesson few will heed. You don't nourish lotus just with poetry, but with routine. Choose a fixed time for your hardest task, like the morning sun that always rises. Do the bottom mud work first, because chilled hands are steadier. After finishing, write a tiny seed, one small lesson learned. Over time, mud becomes fertile ground. The novice tried for 3 days. Tasks he'd postponed, awkward calls, apology letters, vague plans, felt lighter when done early, like pulling weeds in softened damp soil. When the first lotus near the pond bloomed, he leaned close and noticed a thin streak of mud still on its stem. Instead of wiping it off, he smiled and let it be. It was the earth's signature. The teacher standing behind spoke a closing line as succinct as a paperclip. Don't hope for a day without mud. Instead, hope for a day that knows how to use the mud. When you're awake, use the 3 rounds to lift the bloom from the water. When it's time to sleep, let the lotus leaf carry you down into peace. Focus is unfolding a flower. Sleep is letting the pond grow dark whole. That afternoon, the novice sat at his desk and wrote at the top of the page before starting the timer. Today, I will nurture 1 lotus. Only 1 lotus. Let everything else be the honest work of mud. Story 9. Footprints on the sand. In the early morning, mist clung to the bamboo edge. The teacher led the young novice to the riverside sand, a wide, flat expanse like a blank page yet unmarked. Pale fine sand held faint ripples from the night wind, like softly erased notes. The teacher said nothing about seated meditation or breathwork. Instead he proclaimed, "Today, we learn the character of walking." With the tip of his staff, he drew a straight line in the sand, about 10 paces long, and dotted it evenly, like punctuation marks on a line. You will walk, but not just to finish. Place your foot as if you're imprinting a character into the page. The heel touches first like the starting stroke. The soul follows like the body of the character, and the toes lift last like an accent. He instructed, stepping aside to let wind and sand teach. The novice took his first step. The sand cradled his skin, the grains cool as still water. Warmed by the morning sun, 2 seasons at once under his foot. On the second step, the teacher gently tapped his shoulder to remind him, don't push yourself forward. Let your body fall into the step as raindrops fall to earth. No one forces a raindrop to fall. On the third step, the soft sasha of sand underfoot brought his attention fully to his feet, and freed his mind from the swirl of plans and fears. Inhale for 2 steps. Exhale across 3. The teacher taught, 2 to 3 is the ratio that sharpens awareness. For deeper calm, make it 3 to 4. For sleep, adjust to 4 to 6 and simply listen to the sand. The novice began measuring his walking by breath, not steps, and discovered this secret: the longer his breath, the slower his steps, and the more rounded his walking character became. The teacher then asked him to turn and retrace his footprints, stepping into the centers of his previous impressions, as one would rewrite a faint sentence to make it clearer. That is how you fix a tangled day. The teacher smiled, tapping his thigh quietly like a conductor guiding a solo instrument. Don't write a new sentence, rewrite the old one more legibly. When the novice finished that path, the teacher introduced the one-person trail, a gentle S-curve in the sand shaped like a long breath. When you need to concentrate, walk this S in your mind, he said. Begin a 25-minute work session with 5 imagined S loops. With each loop, silently say, step, place, be, here. Touch your pen or keyboard as lightly as a foot touches sand. The novice tried it right there. With each S step he told himself, here, and felt the chatter, chirping birds. Thoughts of lunch, the urge to reach for his phone, fade like distant wind. Then the teacher offered a pottery maker's trick, but done with feet, for a distracted mind. Do the count 100 steps, count from 1 to 100. 1 footstep per number. If you lose track, don't go back, just continue. When you reach 100, stop. Inhale deeply, and start working. 100, he said, is the latch for days when the door won't close. Then he spoke of sleep. Still using sand, at night. Don't walk outside the courtyard. Walk within yourself. He taught the body sand sweep, lie on your side. Imagining your body as a sandy terrain. Use your breath like a gentle broom to slowly sweep from your toes to your head. With each exhale, your broom travels deeply, so your toes, ankles, calves, and so on, settle like soft, damp sand pressed into comfort. If words still run in your head, switch to footprints. Imagine a narrow strip of sand from your forehead down your chest. And count backwards from 30 to 0, each beat marking a small, stamped footprint. At 10, let your tongue rest. At 5, imagine a breeze gently brushing your closed lids. At 0, the sand lies flat, undisturbed. Sleep, he said, is returning the beach to blankness. Don't fear erasing footprints. A fresh day's sun always invites new writing. At midday, when the wind shifted, the teacher taught one final lesson. Whenever you feel your mind racing, walk 15 steps in a small circle around your desk, like drawing a sun. With each step, pair a word. Here. Breathe. 1. Task. 4 words. 1 circle. 3 circles will cool an overheated mind. Then sit and do that one task, like the character your footprints have already guided. Lowering the staff, the teacher gently erased tangled footprints from the sand, saying as though speaking to the sand itself, "This is the right of the present moment, to erase and rewrite without asking permission. You only need to know which character you are writing with each step. Nearing the end of their time, a boisterous group of visitors arrived. Children rushed across the sandy court, leaving messy footprints and laughter echoing like pebbles thrown in water. The novice's irritation rose, until the teacher laid a reassuring hand on his shoulder and smiled. Sand is made to be imprinted and erased. Peace doesn't lie in untouched sand, but in how you wield the broom. With that, the teacher drew a long, straight line through the chaos. A line that didn't argue with other prints but simply passed through. Peaceful as water flowing between stones. Instantly, everything regained order. What seemed disorder became a foundation for clarity. The novice realized that focus isn't making the world silent, it's erecting one clear line amid the noise. And sleep doesn't require clearing all chaos. It needs the sand leveled so tomorrow can write anew. Late afternoon, the warm sand felt like sunny paper. The teacher gathered his staff and offered a final summary. Like a headline: day, write your path. Night, smooth it out. Tired, count 100. Rushed, 4 words. 1 loop. Then he walked away, leaving behind a line of footprints spaced like a silent poem. Each print a letter that didn't boast, and the novice stood watching, feeling as if today he had imprinted a silent sentence in his own heart. Step, place, be, here. That was enough. Story 10. The lamp before the wind. That evening, clouds hung low like a wet cloth, and a breeze swept through the veranda, flipping the bamboo curtain as if uncertain whether to linger or leave. The oil lamp on the wooden table exhaled a thin wisp of smoke, then trembled like someone hesitating between staying and departing. The novice hurried to shield it, fearful the flame would die, but the more he shielded, the more it wavered, and the glass chimney clinked against its base. A soft warning. The teacher entered, his brown robe still dusted with road dust. Without scolding, he set down his bundle of firewood, seated himself at the table, and gazed at the lamp as if watching spring water stir in a well. After a moment, he said simply, "Today, we learn the lesson of lamp with the wind." He removed the chimney, took a small knife, and trimmed the wick, just enough to flatten the top like a page margin. Not too tall to send the flame into a column, not too short to choke it. Instantly, the flame steadied, the smoke subsided. First lesson, the teacher said, before wind, do not raise the flame, lower the wick. When life is windy, don't raise expectations, shrink your aim. Write one task small enough to hold in the palm of your hand. He added a little oil, cleaned the lamp's rim, replaced the chimney. Second lesson, add fuel gently, don't let your will burn dry. Rest, hydrate, take in slow nourishment. This is the fuel of the body. Without it, even the brightest flame smokes. He rotated the lamp so the chimney's opening backed the breeze, and pulled the bamboo screen down 1 notch. Third lesson, don't argue with the wind. Erect a wall of protection, turn off alerts, close windows, move your chair deeper into the room. Focus isn't born from adding more, but from holding less. As the novice watched these simple moves, trim wick, add oil, pivot the lamp, he felt like he was handed a compass. Outside, bamboo whispered like saw teeth. Inside, the lamp's circle of warmth gently cradled his notebook and pen. The teacher tapped the table softly with his fingernail, Now, practice keeping the flame steady in the wind. Write one single sentence, a day's opening line, centered on the page. Set a 25-minute timer. When outside wind, another voice, a notification, or inner wind, a stray thought, blows. Don't argue. Turn the lamp. Return your eyes to the ring of light. Touch pen to paper. Exhale longer than you inhale, 4 in, 6 out, to fuel the flame evenly with wind. The novice followed. After 10 minutes, a cold impulse to grab his phone flickered, but instead of blaming himself, he turned the lamp by tapping the pen at his sentence's punctuation. Exhaled, and focused on the lamp's glow. The urge passed like a leaf lodging in a doorway slot and then falling. 10 minutes later, worry about the next day's schedule arose. Can I be on time? He trimmed the wick, shrunk the task to call at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Underlined it and folded the page margin like replacing the chimney, and instantly his worry cleared. The teacher instructed, rest 5 minutes, that's like lowering the wick. Stand, step onto the veranda, stretch your back, let your gaze drift to the horizon. Don't let the flame grapple with wind endlessly, no flame resists that. Even the strongest will char. At night, the wind still blew. Clouds shredded overhead. The teacher dimmed the room, leaving only the oil lamp, a small exclamation point of light in the darkness. To sleep, he said softly, we don't keep the lamp, we bring the lamp to a gentle off. His voice was like someone whispering a bedtime story. Don't blow it out roughly or snuff it abruptly. Let it fade with a longer breath than the flame. He tilted the chimney to let more air in. The flame dulled, it sagged, as if withdrawing the urge to argue. He guided the novice to lie on his side. Hand on the belly, eyelids half closed. Inhale for 4. Light as raising a wick. Hold a thin moment like the edge of candlelight. Exhale for 8, long like a warm breeze passing the lamp. Repeat 30 rounds, as each round passed. Imagine the flame dimming 1 notch. At round 20, the tongue releases, the teeth part, the shoulders melt. By 10, the circle of light shrinks to a dot between your brows. At 0, that glowing dot disappears, no smoke and no regret. If a stray thought creeps in like a stray breeze, the teacher said not to fight it, just add a chimney by silently repeating a single word with breath. Like calm, 4 in calm, 8 out, calm, so the wind turns into backdrop. Before sleep, when the mind is too smoky, he taught a cleansing ritual. Write 3 lines. Tomorrow I will. Fold your notebook. Place it by the lamp. Our brains love small chandeliers like that. Without them, it keeps dragging wind into your dreams. And remember, he said, never bring the lamp into the blanket. Extinguish the real flame before lighting the flame inside, using imagination. A hazy glow holding your forehead. Reducing with each exhale. It cannot burn, only lull you. At that moment, a sudden gust flared the lamp for a heartbeat before it went out, leaving a thin curl of smoke like a small serpent in midair. The novice rose reflexively, but the teacher gently rested his hand on the novice's wrist and said, don't argue with a late wind. We've trimmed the wick, turned the lamp, added fuel, let wind do its part now. He lifted the chimney just enough and snapped it down, a peaceful close like curtains falling. The flame retreated to a point and flickered out with a gentle whoosh, not tragic, not lossful, only the soft scent of oil lingering like a lullaby. "See," the teacher whispered in darkness. "Peace isn't a room without wind. It's someone who knows how to angle the lamp." He handed the novice a slip of paper with 3 softly glowing lines like rings of light. Before wind, lower wick, shrink the task. During wind, turn lamp, build shield. After wind, add oil, rest and sleep. That night, the novice practiced extinguishing with a breath longer than the flame. With 4 in, 8 out, counting down from 30, at 15. The last thought of tomorrow felt like a wick extinguished. No ember left to ignite, at 5. Just a tiny warm glow remained at his brow, at 0. That vanished like oil on a cool stone. And just before that final departure, high in his throat, he heard a whisper. No more needed, not the teacher's voice. Not the lamp's voice, but his own discovering the simplest of truths. Wind will blow. A skilled lamp holder knows how to adjust. And the night earns its peace. Story 11. Ink grinding under the rain. On a damp afternoon, raindrops dripped rhythmically from the temple roof, sounding like tiny musical taps against the tiles. The teacher handed the young novice a heavy black inkstone carved from stone and a fragrant inkstick bearing the scent of incense. "Today," the teacher said, "we learn through ink, not through words." Before the boy lay a pristine sheet of rice paper, unlined, untouched, and beside it, a clean brush whose bristles were closed tightly like the tip of a young bamboo leaf. The novice, impatient by nature, immediately asked, "What shall I write first?" The teacher answered by resting the inkstick in the bowl of the inkstone and dropping a single bead of clear water that settled like a small, calm lake. Then he guided, "Grind until the water turns into ink. Listen to the rhythm of grinding join with the rain." With hesitation, the novice began. At first, the grinding echoed dryly, clack, clack, like stones striking each other. The teacher adjusted his wrist angle and pressure so it softened into shish, shish, a smooth, continuous breath, joining the raindrops in gentle rhythm. If you want beautiful letters, your ink must be still. If you want a still mind, your hand must be even. The teacher whispered, "Don't rush. Let your grinding become seamless until you forget counting the strokes." The incense's warmth mingled with damp wood. The novice's scattered thoughts, unfinished tasks, unanswered words, nameless anxieties, settled, like silt sinking in a jar. They did not vanish, but became still. When you grind, keep your eyes on where ink meets water. Don't chase the escaping drops. That's the narrow frame for focus. But when you want rest, widen your gaze to see the entire ink well as a quiet dark pond. That's the wide frame for peace. 1 inkstone, 2 states. When the water turned fully dark, like a moonless sky, the teacher nodded and offered, "It's enough ink to write one thing." He didn't ask the novice to write a poem or scripture. Only said, "Write 1 horizontal stroke." He placed the novice's hand on the brush, adjusted his grip gently, secure yet gentle, as though cradling a small bird. The brush tip touched paper, the ink flowed, creating a precise black line with pale mist at its edge, straight yet unforced, laying itself gently into the sheet. "That," the teacher said, is the character one Nyat in Vietnamese. It is also your anchor for your work session. When you face a difficult task, don't plunge in. Perform the ritual. Inkstone, brush, paper. Grind 60 rounds. Draw one deep, one stroke. Then write 3 bullet points, small next steps of your task. Set a timer for 25 minutes. When stray thoughts drift in, don't argue. Make a small dot in the margin, like wiping off excess ink from the inkstone rim, and return to your 1 and your 3 steps. After the session, wash the brush and calm your mind. Then rest for 5 minutes. The novice did, and discovered something surprising. Just grinding the ink slowed his mind enough that his hand clearly wrote 3 bullet points. Whenever the phone pinged, he marked a dot and glanced at the 1 stroke, reminding him that this session was just 1 sustained note. If the stroke is too bold, ease your hand. Too faint, add a drop of ink. If the brush feels too thick for the task, switch to a finer one. The teacher smiled. Focus works that way. Shift the tool, not the storm. The rain outside thickened, yet inside, the rhythm, grinding, breathing, writing, formed a seamless chain, steady, light, grounded. The teacher offered another strategy for overcoming inertia in evening writing. Set a no-write grinding timer. Grind for 3 minutes before you're allowed to write. Beginning is the hardest part, so start with something easy, grinding. By minute 3, your hand is warmed, mind aligned. Then write. Call it 3-2-1. 3 minutes grinding. 2 strokes, 1 and a dot. 1 clear goal. When the session ended, the novice rinsed the brush in a separate bowl, gently flicking it to spread bristles like soft grasses. Dried it, and laid it flat. Positioning the brush properly is part of the practice. A true craftsman closes and opens cleanly, not only writes well. At night, the teacher extinguished the lantern and left a sliver of light on the veranda, placing the inkstone before the novice. Sleeping with your ink meditation is an art. At night you don't need letters, you need stillness. He dropped a water droplet into the ink well, watching it spread into a pale ring holding the darkness like a thought held softly at center. Lie on your side, hand on your belly. Close your eyes and see this inkstone in your mind's eye at your brow. With each exhale, let the dark deepen and the pale ring shrink. Count backward from 30 to 0, each number a settling of ink. At 20, let your tongue release. Teeth open a bit. At 10, shoulders melt. At 5, the ink well becomes uniformly dark, no pale ring. At 0, it becomes a velvet surface, even thoughts that touch it sink. If stray thoughts break in like errant droplets, the teacher said, don't stir. Just whisper, ink settling, and continue the count. Sleep is like ink settling, not wiping the stone clean. For those startled by noises at night, he added the ink guard. Pick a soft background sound, rain, fan, or clock ticking. Whisper it with your breaths. 30, rain. 29, rain. Until the sound becomes the blanket covering the inkstone. If your mind is too dark, too dense with thought, the teacher said sometimes, you don't lack darkness, you lack dilution. So add a drop of water with 3 long breaths, in by 4, out by 8, to lighten. For those who struggled to stop halfway through their day, he taught the brush stopping dot before you fully extinguish. Write a tiny mark at the notebook's margin. Maybe 1 or a dot, like placing a lid on the day. The mind loves closure. Without it, it'll drift searching. That dot is the lid of the inkstone. With it covered, the night may fully settle. Before leaving, the teacher added one more lesson the novice had not expected. Don't press harder with the brush to compensate for thinning ink. Don't stiffen yourself to compensate for tiredness. When the ink is low, grind more. When you are low, sleep. Don't borrow strength from the wrong source. He held the inkstick, pointing to gentle worn grooves from repeated grinding. This is the history of persistence. Grind a bit each day, and your writing will come alive. Be still a bit each night, and your life will become clear. Rain now filled the veranda like a curtain, heavy yet soft. The novice rose, held the inkstone brush paper set like a rhythm newly learned. That night, he didn't reach for his phone. Instead, he placed a small ink dot, like a star, in his notebook. Closed it, lay on his side, and watched the inkstone in his brow settling down. Between 10 and 9, he felt something both concrete and ineffable. He doesn't need every task done before sleeping. He only needs to close the lid at the right time. The next morning, he opened his notebook to find that tiny ink dot had bloomed into a single clear line, 3 steps of a hard task. Like a flower printed on paper needing no overnight drawing. From that day forward, when he needs focus, he doesn't wait for inspiration, he grinds. When he needs sleep, he doesn't wait for silence, he lets the ink settle. 1 inkstone, 2 states. A small habit anchoring both day and night. Day begins with grind, write, pause. Night ends with wash, settle, sleep. Story 12. The loom under the veranda. Early morning drifted a thin cloud across the temple roof, leaving behind the scent of damp bamboo. Beneath the veranda stood an old loom made from dark brown jackwood, deep like aged tea. Its vertical threads stretched taut, and the weft threads curled in the shuttle like a quiet stream preparing to flow. That day, instead of leading the novice to the courtyard or speaking of breath or the sound of the bell, the teacher sat on the weaver's low stool and positioned his feet on the pedals. With hands on the worn shuttle rod, he invited the novice to sit opposite. Today, he said, we learn through thread. He continued. A piece of cloth is the harmony of 2 forces, the warp that holds, and the weft that connects. So it is with your mind, too stiff. You tear, too soft. You tangle. Focus is knowing when to pull tight, when to let go. Then he began, pressing down with his left foot. He lifted the heddle, shot the shuttle, pulled it back, and tapped. The quiet, thok, click, thud of wood against wood became the morning's rhythm. In that single shuttle movement, the gap in the warp became a solid weft thread, steady like a freshly signed signature. The teacher didn't explain further. He simply slowed the cycle so the novice could see the 4 distinct actions: press, shoot, pull, tap. When you begin a difficult task, he said, borrow this rhythm. Press, wake up. Shoot, aim your mind. Pull, bring the task close. Tap, seal the thought. 1 cycle per weft thread. Don't demand a whole cloth in a single pass. The novice placed his hand on the loom's edge, feeling the grooved wood as if it were the fingerprints of those who had woven before. As the teacher flicked the shuttle, Something in him paused its chase after drifting dust in the mist. Handing the shuttle to the novice, he tried, and awkwardly caught a knot in the weft, forming a small bump. "No matter," said the teacher, smiling. "A knot is an invitation to mend, not a blame." He showed him how to gently loosen the warped threads beside the knot. Ease it down, press flat, it disappeared. Like correcting a slip in speech. In your work, obstructions, notifications, fears, memories are like knots. Don't cut your thread. Rather, loosen on both sides and carry on. In your journal, when a knot arises, mark it as a fragment thread. Note a keyword. And keep passing the shuttle. At the end of your session, gather those fragments and braid them into a separate strip for tomorrow. That honors both the cloth and its stray threads. Practicing, the novice noticed something subtle. Each time he added a fragment to the margin, his mind followed the loom's rhythm: press, shoot, pull, tap, until his heart no longer demanded immediate results, but contented itself with honest weaving. When the breeze stirred the warped threads like the faintest pluck of a harp, the teacher seized the moment. When wind arrives, change feet. He shifted to his right foot, reversing the weave's direction, and the fabric held firm. Life will constantly shift the pulling force, he said. You needn't brace the wind, just know when to change your stance. If your rhythm becomes flood-like, don't push back. Instead, shrink your task to half. Write a paragraph, instead of finish the manuscript. That's changing feet. The novice nodded, seeing two shades develop in the cloth, light and dark, and the edge lay smooth, like a well-tilled plot after harvesting. Now, said the teacher, add a warp of purpose before each shuttle throw. Draw up a single thread of a different color that runs the cloth's length. Let each pick brush against it. This is your one guiding question. Draft introduction. Compose email. Calculate cash flow. Anything that doesn't touch that thread is a fragment. Don't weave it. He handed the novice a thin indigo thread and anchored it at the left edge. It sprang into sight, the anchor for his vision. With each shuttle stroke, the thread was softly kissed. Then the weft pressed over it. Any thought that didn't connect with that thread instantly showed itself as irrelevant. That is keeping your line. This warp of purpose is a small sign at the doorway. Today, I only received this intention. The teacher let the novice settle into the weave's flow, the wooden rhythm measurable enough to track time. Then he suddenly paused the pedal and turned his palm upward, showing calloused skin. If you weave without pause, your hands will burn. Focus without rest burns the mind. Every 10 strokes, hang the shuttle, rest the shuttle. Drop your shoulders, gaze out the veranda, take a sip of water. Rub your palms. Every 20 strokes, stand and take 5 steps. Rest isn't leaving the work, it's returning the shuttle. A shuttle properly rested weaves stronger. Then he demonstrated something subtle but profound. Placing the shuttle down exactly, not wherever it lands. The novice realized that a session doesn't start with sitting down. It starts with positioning the shuttle properly. That small readiness promises that the next threads will follow consciously. As midday's cicadas crescendoed like a background score, the teacher spoke of sleep, still in weaving terms. To sleep is to unframe. If your warp is still tight while you sleep, your dreams will entangle. Before bed, perform the unlasso ritual. Write 3 hanging threads in your journal, each on a line. Underlined. Imagine cutting them from the frame, rolling them into 3 little bundles, placing them in a basket. This signals to your mind that the frame may rest. Then lie on your side, knees touching, hand on your belly. In your mind, don't walk the weft threads, release the horizontal net. Imagine a bamboo blind lowering from your brow to chest, slat by slat. Each breath releases one. When the blind reaches your heart, tongue relaxes, teeth part. When it touches your belly, shoulders soften. If a stray thought rises like a misplaced weft, simply remember, I have hung the shuttle, and let the blind settle further. Don't reverse it. The blind has its own rhythm. He added, for jumpy sleepers, use the thread guard. Pick a calm background sound, rain, fan, or clock, and whisper, rain, on each count. 30, rain. 29, rain. Let it become the cloth that wraps your mind. On nights when your frame feels overly dense, he reminded, sometimes darkness isn't lacking, you just need dilution. So add 3 long breaths worth of water imagery. Inhale 4. Exhale 8. Visualize the screen lightening. For those who struggled to close the day fully, he taught, final brush stop before lights out. Write a tiny character or dot in your journal's margin, like tying off the frame. The mind loves closure. Your dot is the loom's lid. With it closed, the night may fully weave rest. Before leaving, the teacher offered a final nugget. Don't tighten your shuttle to compensate for worn threads. Don't tense your body to compensate for lack of rest. When your thread is loose, tighten it. When you are spent, sleep. Don't borrow wrong energy. He tapped the inkstick against the worn loom wood, riven grooves mapping patience. This is the history of persistence. Daily practice yields living cloth. Daily stillness yields clarity. Rain had become a soft curtain outside. The novice rose, cradling the loom, shuttle, frame, recognizing a newly learned rhythm. That night, instead of waiting for inspiration, he set a warp of intention, marked a tiny fragment dot, and listened to the fourfold rhythm inside: press, shoot, pull, tap, until he heard within, enough for today. And at night, before sleep, he wrote 3 hanging threads. Pictured the blind lowering slat by slat with each breath, until his frame relaxed. Warp softened, and his body fell as gently as a shuttle finally idle. Story 13. The Go Board under the Pine Tree. One early morning, a square shadow from the ancient pine tree stretched perfectly across the surface of the go board set beneath its branches. The 19x19 grid resembled a silent map of the sky. The teacher brought out 2 bowls, one with white stones like scallop shells, the other black like peppercorns, and placed them on the board with a faint clack that felt like the start of a quiet day. Today, he said, we learn through moves, not words. Then he pushed forward the black stone, offering the first move to the novice. Used to acting quickly, the boy reached to place a stone centrally to make an impressive start. But the teacher shook his head gently and pointed to a corner. Corner first, side second, center last. That's your mind's sequence when beginning a task. Build boundaries, then frame, then intention. Getting the order wrong leads only to chaos. Obediently, the boy placed his black stone at the 4-4 point in the corner. The soft tap on the wood sounded like a slow door opening to the new day. The teacher made his white move in the opposite corner, calm, not competitive, and then spoke again, in go. There is sen, initiative, and goat, responding. Life is like that too. Before you tackle a task, create your own initiative with a simple ritual. Survey the board for 5 seconds, only 5 seconds, choose a region. And anticipate 3 moves if you were the only player there. Do the same in your work. Scan the day. Choose a block. Jot down 3 steps, and you already have initiative. The opening evolved. White and black crept into each corner, anchoring the board like 4 mooring points that protected it from drifting winds. The apprentice felt the urge to chase a fight on the right edge. But the teacher gently held his hand and reminded him, "Don't let your eyes become wandering stones. Choose a single area and stay there. Read only 3 moves ahead. 10 moves. And you're burnt out." The teacher poured tea, voice soft like a stream. "When you focus, don't gain the entire board. Plant a local stone, your one task. Whenever another thought intrudes, don't argue. Capture it like a stray stone and drop it into the bowl. At the end, count the stones to see how many times your mind wandered. That's a truer score than self-blame." Following this, the boy discovered that each time he dropped a stray thought into the bowl, the soft ceramic, plink, barely audible, returned him to the present. Mid-game, the teacher placed an elegant S-curve of white stones to rescue a position thought lost. Living and dying in Go differ from winning and losing. A group with eyes lives on. A task with eyes carries on. What are eyes in work? A small concrete milestone achievable in 20 to 30 minutes. Like, write 3 opening sentences. Outline 3 budget lines. Sketch 3 main points. Without eyes, don't start the fight. With eyes, even the wind won't distract. The boy nodded and jotted 3 such eyes in his notebook, anchors for the next work session. As the sun shifted, pine needles dripped onto the bull's lid like hard raindrop poetry. The teacher sent the boy a precarious position on the left flank. 2 black groups under siege. The boy rushed to overextend. The teacher gently pressed his finger on the board. "Read your hand. Don't put out a neighbor's fire when your own chimney is still smoking." Then he suggested a calming tessuji, a clever move, connect on the weak point, a stitch up for stability. In work, your tessuji is closure, before moving to something else. Write 1 sentence to conclude what you just did. Conclusion. 2 items left for tomorrow. That gives the chain continuity. Everyone loves elegant progress, but the wise person knows not to break the flow. The novice tried it in his mind, before opening a new tab. He'd write, to do, finalize outline A. His workflow stayed connected, his return was seamless. The teacher continued, in mid-game. People fall for fake sente, things that grab attention as urgent. To test if it's truly sente, ask, if I don't respond, do I lose a lot? If not, stay on your task. Life has many fake sentes, notifications, curiosity, anxiety. Don't chase them. As the board expanded, gaining territory on one side, sacrificing on the other, the teacher set a special work rhythm. Cycle Sen Goat, 22 minutes of active initiative, followed by 3 minutes of response. Working, pause. Go small instead of pushing so hard. If you stay Sen forever, your mind burns out, If you are always goat, your day drifts. Late afternoon light fell long and golden. The teacher guided the game to its end and then unexpectedly passed the turn. A stone set on the side instead of the board confused the novice. "Why let him go?" he asked. The teacher smiled calmly. "It's not yield, it's 2 passes that finish a game. You need passes in the day too. Lay down your pen when you're done, not when it's perfect. Enough for today is the move that starts tomorrow's game." At dusk, he folded the board halfway, preserving a cluster of stones like early evening clouds, and turned the day into an endgame for sleep. Using the stones themselves. Sleep is another endgame. Counting sleepy eyes. Lie on your side. Place the 2 bowls atop your belly like stone sets. Close your eyes and visualize the 19 times 19 grid behind your brow. With each exhale, imagine placing 1 black eye, stone, on an intersection. With each inhale, 1 white. Count from 19 down to 0. Each number takes out a row. When you finish row 10, your tongue relaxes and teeth part. After row 5, shoulders loosen like captive groups finally settled. At 0, the board clears, no black, no white. That's when you let go. If another thought, like just one more move, flashed in, the teacher admonished, "Don't try to win in your head when it's 2 a.m. Whisper, pass. Move on to the next row. Tomorrow brings a fresh board. Night isn't a battlefield for those who can't switch off." He offered the capture ritual before lights out. Write 3 to dose in the margin as 3 stones in a bowl. Then cap it. The mind loves lids. Without them, it will revisit unfinished corners instead of settling. As he gathered stones into the bowl and tapped the lid, the ceramic echoes sounded like heavy raindrops, then absolute stillness. The teacher said, "Wisdom doesn't come from winning everything, it comes from knowing when to pause." As dusk deepened, the novice practiced, counting sleepy eyes, 19, 18, 17. The rows faded in his mind like mist receding. Around row 10, his lips parted. By row 5, his chest relaxed, and as he reached row 0, he found himself in a moment of opening, in the stillness behind his brow. He heard the quiet voice of knowing. He didn't need to be a champion to be calm, just to place 1 steady stone at a time. Story 14: The bowl of dough that breathes. That morning, the temple kitchen smelled of fermented sweetness and wood. The teacher brought out a large bowl of dough draped with a damp cloth. Its surface was rising gently, like the chest of someone sleeping soundly. He said, "Today we learn through dough, not through sutras." He poured warm water into a bowl, sprinkled salt like gentle rain, added a pinch of yeast, stirring until the liquid turned milky. Like mist, dough is like the mind. He said, "Rushed, it tears. Stiff, it hardens. In rhythm, it rises." The novice plunged his hand in and felt the initial stickiness, as tentative as a shy handshake. The teacher taught him to knead. Don't batter, stretch the dough back. Fold it in, rotate the bowl, then breathe out. Don't strike to release frustration. Fold to align the gluten strands, like connecting one thought to another, he said, placing a small hourglass beside him. He explained the attention cycle. Knead for 8 minutes. Rest for 22, fold once, and repeat 3 times. He called it the dough cycle. During those 8 minutes, You focus on just one task. Jot down 3 small steps. If a stray thought glues itself to your hand, dip your hand in water, exhale. Mark a dot on the notebook margin, and continue folding. The 22-minute rest allows the dough to work on its own. Wash your hands. Sip water. Gaze at a plant in the garden. Return for one fold. Pause. Write a closing sentence for the task. Over time, the day will rise without being overworked. Following the teacher, the novice noticed that each fold, lifting and placing the dough back to center, straightened his scattered thoughts, gathering them in calm alignment. The teacher shared a baker's tip to tame impatience after mixing. Let the dough rest, autolyse, for 20 minutes to allow water to fully absorb. Work too soon and it resists. Work too fast and you lose structure. The same applies to work. After writing 3 bullet points, don't rush. Take 5 mindful breaths. Working slower this way often leads farther. The dough grew smooth like a pear's skin. The teacher brushed a drop of oil on the bowl's rim. This is the dough's garment, the structure and ritual. No oil, and it sticks. No boundary, and your intention drifts. The novice turned on his do not disturb mode, placing his phone face down far from him, like applying oil to the bowl's edge. Immediately, the day's surface felt less sticky. At the 3rd fold, the teacher presented a blade and drew 3 thin, clean cuts across the dough's surface. We score to guide the rise. Without scoring, it bursts at random. Tasks need a rise crease, too, before a session. Create a very specific opening sentence like, write section 1. 5 sentences for setting the scene. That incision allows ideas to rise gracefully. If tension builds mid-session, use a misting breath. Inhale 3. Exhale 6. 3 times, as if spritzing moisture to keep the dough supple. He fired up the brick oven, not to full heat at once, but gradually. Focus doesn't start at 450 degrees. It starts at 350, gentle warmth first. Then raise. Many people burn out by turning the heat up too quickly. Rather than leave the dough to bake, he brushed its surface with water. Water is breath, he said. The crust browns nicely because it is hydrated. Your mind brightens when you breathe. While waiting, the teacher tasked the novice. Spend 5 minutes cleaning this crowded corner of table, sifting away breadcrumbs. A tidier table leads to fewer crumb thoughts. Then sit down and write 1 sentence. Set timer for next cycle. Skilled bakers plan the next batch. Skilled workers plan the next session. The aroma of baking bread filled the air. When the teacher opened the oven, a wave of warmth greeted them and the dough had bloomed. It scored lines opening like smiling petals. Now, he said, don't cut immediately. Let it cool 10. The gentle cracking of crust is the bread speaking. Work deserves cooling too. Stand and stretch for 3 minutes. Then review. Heat muffles clarity. At night, the teacher extinguished the oven but left faint embers glowing like stars. Bedtime is not baking, it is proofing, he said. He handed the novice a small bowl lined with cloth, depositing a portion of dough inside. Before you go to sleep, gather the dough, write 3 droplets of intention for tomorrow. Fold the notebook like wrapping cloth. Lie on your side imagining your body as dough, your hand over belly as the cloth. Breathe using the men 4-7-8 rhythm. Inhale for 4 as if pouring warm water. Hold for 7 as water soaks in. Exhale for 8 as gently covering with cloth. Count down from 30. Each number is a minute of imagined resting dough. At 20, tongue relaxes. At 10, shoulders melt. At 5, eyelids close softly like the oven's door. At 0, the dough stops wanting and just rises. You are not forcing sleep, you allow sleep to bloom. If a thought bubbles up midday like yeast, he advised, dust with flour, choose one word, warm, repeat it with each exhale. Envisioning fine flour settling over the dough, calming the surface. For lingering unresolved edges, he offered the cool fold before lights out. Write an unfinished sentence. Tomorrow. Example A. Fold the notebook like dough into storage. Don't overbake at night. Night is your cool cycle. Following this, the novice heard his inner rhythm settle. His heartbeat softened. His breath slowed. Anxious edges flattened like dough releasing steam. Around counts 12 to 11. He almost tasted the soft milky sweetness of dough. Between 3 and 2, his eyelids were heavy as a cool oven door sliding shut without a sound. On days when the rain fell hard, yeast weak, dough lazy to rise, he felt the urge to add more yeast or sugar to rush it. The teacher shook his head. Adding too soon sours the rise. Better to rest longer or warm gently, wrap it in a blanket of warmth. When the mind is cold, the yeast won't work. Another time, the dough overflowed the bowl because he forgot to cover it. The teacher didn't scold, but gently transferred the spilled dough into a pan and fried it into flat cakes with a golden aroma. What spills isn't wasted. Transform it into a small lesson. A slippage in the day becomes its own recipe. He offered one final note to the perfectionist. Don't score too deep just to show the pattern. Don't elevate your goals just to impress. Score just enough to guide the rise. The rest is up to the oven, your steady warmth. That night, before sleep, the novice wrote 3 seeds for the next day. Folded the notebook, lay on his side under the metaphorical cloth. He understood why the teacher called it the dough bowl that breathes, because throughout the day everything worked not by force, but by gentle rhythm. Need rest fold in mindfulness. Proof warm rise in stillness. Stay hydrated in intention. Score just enough, and always keep the dough covered. And when the winds of life stirred, instead of igniting the fire, just lower the heat, brush on some water, score a guiding line, then both your work and your sleep rise calmly. Not from strain, but from knowing how to breathe. Story 15. The Watchmaker in the Attic. At midday, the temple roof lay silent as a sealed wooden box. Only the attic, the teacher's occasional retreat, was bathed in light from a small window. On a table lay a worn sheepskin, scattered with golden gears like grains of wheat, a balance bridge as fine as a hair, tiny screws in a porcelain dish, and a magnifying lens casting a luminous circle on the wood. The teacher seated himself, cleaned hands as dry as new parchment, and rested a watchmaker's eyepiece over one eye. He said, "Today we learn by rhythm, not theory," as he opened the back of a stopped mechanical watch. A small but crisp click echoed, as though time's core had been lifted from its case and laid bare. The mainspring coiled like a paused lung. The escape wheel waiting for a nod like a tethered horse. And the balance wheel, tiny oscillator, still like an eye yet to blink. Rather than winding straight away, he placed the screwdriver onto the screw securing the balance bridge, turned it a mere quarter turn, and blew gently. The balance wheel trembled, caught a ring of light, and began its steady tick-tock, tick-tock, as regular as footsteps returning to a well-worn path. There, the teacher smiled. Focus isn't forcing the mechanism to spin faster. It's fine-tuning for even rhythm. You have 3 tasks. Wind, shield, adjust. Wind means give just the right energy before your session. Wind, your spring, drink water. Stretch your back for 60 seconds. Jot down 3 small steps. Without winding, the gears turn only a breath before stopping. Shield means blocking distractions for the next 30 minutes. Silence alerts as if closing the case back. Move your phone out of reach like removing the rotor. Where the heart's Inca block, ask yourself one question. What does finished mean? And write 1 line. Adjust means match your rhythm to your breath. Place your fingernail on your pulse. Breathe in 5 beats. Breathe out 7 beats. Keep that pulsing rhythm for 10 cycles. If your mind races, don't wind anxiously. Instead, back off by half a turn. Jot a brief note in your margin and return to the gears. He handed the magnifying lens to the novice, inviting him to peer into the microcosm where everything moves by imperceptible steps. The boy realized why his own work tended toward force. He aimed for sweeping moves, forgetting the power of the small, faithful tick of the escape wheel. In your day, said the teacher, choose 1 gear to turn, the smallest actionable motion. 3 sentences. 3 figures. 3 lines. Each tick is a tooth. Don't spin the whole wheel. He tested this lesson, placed 12 tiny screws, standing in for 12 hours, and said, in a 30-minute session, tighten exactly 1 screw, half a turn, every 5 minutes. That lets your hands know time passes. At the 6th screw, pause for 3 minutes, stand, gaze afar, drop your shoulders, then resume to the 12th screw. Your small day is done. The novice tried it slowly, and found that whenever a stray impulse to open another tab flickered, the magnified tick-tock under his lens pulled him back. He learned to yield to the small, instead of forcing through. He turned the tiny screw, exhaled, wrote a note, looked away from the window, moved to the next tooth with intention. Mid-session, a gust rattled the attic window, silencing the tick-tock. The boy panicked. The teacher didn't slam the window. He rotated the mechanism away from the draft. Don't battle the wind, turn the frame. When your world is noisy, adjust your listening field. Wear white noise. Let the internal tick-tock rise above the din. And remember, fuel lubrication for a human is a 15-minute nap or a warm bowl of soup. Without it, gears grind. With tweezers he repositioned the intermediary wheel flawlessly. Big tasks succeed on the strength of small gears. If your intermediary wheel wobbles, or you jam too many projects in one day, the solution isn't brute force. Remove a gear. Then came a watchmaker's tessuji. Lock the arbor. Close the lid before starting the next task. Write a closing sentence about the current one. Remaining. Example L. Snap the notebook shut like the case back. That way, when you return, You don't resume dismantling the entire mechanism. By afternoon, his internal minute hand advanced one screw at a time. The tick-tock, a silent frame holding his gaze. As dusk painted orange across the window, the teacher closed the watch case, wiped it with a soft cloth, and said, "A focused day ends here. Night is another endgame. Don't wind it further." He hung a small old pendulum from a nail. Sleep requires rhythm release. After extinguishing the lamp, only a gray glow remained. Lie on your side, hand over your navel like the case back. Visualize the pendulum swinging. Sync 508. Inhale, count, go. 5 as it swings left. Don't catch it in the midpoint. Exhale, return. 8 as it swings right. With each exhale, the swing's arc narrows. Count down from 60. Each number a tooth sinking into night. At 30, tongue relaxes. At 15, shoulder melts. At 5, the swing dims in the mind. At 0, the pendulum stops, mechanism rests. Don't force it, let it stop itself. If a thought leapt like a crazed second hand, he said, tap very gently twice on your sternum. This is the human shock absorber. Or use a 4-4-4-4 box, breathe in 4. Hold 4. Breathe out 4. Rest 4. A square brace so the second's hand cannot stray. For startled sleepers, he offered the pillow clock. Place a gentle mechanical ticking clock at bedside. Or play a soft tick-tock track, giving the mind a gentle rhythm to follow. Some fear silence. He chuckled. Give them a rhythm instead. To anchor tomorrow, he assigned the 2-hand pass before lights off. Write 2 lines. 1 as your hour hand, big task. 1 as minute hand, first tiny step, close the notebook. People like their clock hands in place. Without them, the brain draws a clock at night. One stormy night, roof tiles rattled, and the tick-tock vanished. The novice's heart raced, and he reached for his phone. The teacher tapped the window frame. Don't wind with fear. Add lubrication with warmth. He laid a warming pack over the boy's belly. Warm core, slow heart, he whispered. The boy returned to 508 rhythm, and found. Wind persisted. But his internal clock slowed its swing. This wasn't a storm to overcome. It was a backdrop for stillness to reclaim its rhythm. The next morning, the teacher opened the watch again and pointed to fine scratches on the balance bridge. These, he said, are the history of haste, and delivered his final lesson, tightening a small screw half a turn. The person who holds the day isn't strongest, but the one who adjusts their rhythm. To focus, wind right. Shield clean. Adjust precisely. To sleep, don't wind. Narrow your arc. Let rhythm wind down. Everything else, let the escape wheel do its slow, faithful work. From then on, each time the novice opened his notebook, he heard in his inner ear a faint tick-tock, not the clock's voice, but that of a day in agreement with itself. And at night, when he pulled the quilt up to his chest, he knew he might need only a few more ticks, because the mechanism would stop not because he forced it, but because it had run its cycle and could rest. Story 16: The Dark Room and the Silent Image. Late afternoon, the teacher led the novice upstairs to a tiny attic behind the main hall, a room just large enough for a desk and a sealed window. The scent of aged wood and paper intertwined like undeveloped film. Today, the teacher said, we learn with shadow. He poked a tiny pinhole into the cardboard covering the window. Light from the courtyard slipped through that single piercing, landing on a white sheet propped against the wall. The result was a silent upside-down tableau. Rooftops dangle above, pine tree roots reaching skyward. Figures drift like ink strokes. The novice held his breath, an entire world pulled inside. Unheard, merely because the aperture was small. The teacher pointed to that tiny dot of light. 3 elements make an image clear: the covering, the aperture, and the exposure time. Concentration works the same way. He placed another piece of cardboard to cover half the hole, and the image sharpened. Roof tile lines edge into clearer focus. When you face work, don't throw the whole window open. Narrow your field. He handed a paper tube, a primitive viewfinder. Look through this. Cover the end to block distractions. Don't fear a narrow frame, it clarifies. Find one subject in that tube. A line, a number, a photo. Write its first sentence on a card and tack it to your desk. That's your focal point. Stand firm like a tripod, back straight, chin relaxed, feet aligned. Then start your exposure, 25 minutes undisturbed. If a stray thought drifts in, don't swat it away, just lower your gaze to the focal sentence. Exhale for 7 counts. Tap your pen once. 3 simple steps, and the image stays still. The novice obeyed. In the silence of room and paper, only the tapping of pen and the warmth of page persisted. Outside, the clack of sandals. Bird calls stayed muted. Invisible through the tube. 10 minutes in, he wished for his phone. The teacher gently shook his head and taped a black card over the phone screen. This is your hood. Then quietly moved it beyond reach. The novice realized his distraction wasn't lack of focus, it was uncontrolled light leakage. The teacher continued, your human ISO sensitivity? High ISO is too reactive. Coffee, sugar, irritation make noise. Work needs detail. Lower your ISO. Hydrate. Eat bland. Turn off pings. If noise persists, add a filter, a soft background hum, rain, a fan, to drown out grain. At session's end, the teacher removed the cardboard from the hole momentarily to let a sliver more light in. Then replaced it. 5-minute breaks let the eye breathe. Don't leave the shutter open non-stop, you'll burn out. As night deepened, he shifted the lesson to sleep. No lamps, just shadow and shaping. Sleep is long exposure. To blur, open your aperture, prolong the exposure, and keep the camera steady. He gave the novice a larger round cardboard to nearly seal the hole. Then placed a small note on the novice's forehead, his internal screen. Lie on your side, the teacher instructed. Hand on your belly as if stabilizing the camera. Now do 3 steps. Open aperture, extend exposure, lower ISO. Open aperture. Part your eyelids softly. Don't furrow your brow. Imagine a soft glow the size of a coin above your brow. With each exhale, let that glow expand by half a finger width. Extend exposure. Breathe in a 7 count. Breathe out 11. With the exhalation, let the day's images blur into long streaks. That blur is the filter of sleep. It turns sharp edges into soft water. Lower ISO. Turn off screens, pressures, expectations. If a flash of thought flickers, don't chase it. Whisper, blur, on your next exhalation. Stop the flash. He added the camera support for the body, if your heartbeat rattles your frame. Place a thin notebook on your belly. With each breath, watch its edge drop a millimeter. 30 counts, steady. If you skip a number, keep counting. No need to restart. At times when thoughts still flashed, he offered a red filter. Turn on a tiny warm bedside light for a minute. Read just 3 lines. Stopping mid-sentence, then close your book. This is the red gel for the brain. It's cue that the darkroom's running. Going further means your aperture opened at the wrong time. The novice practiced 7 in, 11 out. The glow over his forehead thickened like dew on glass. The day's sharpest scenes softened into long ink trails. Between counts 18 and 17, his tongue released. By 5, the notebook on his belly lay warm like a stone. At 0, the room lay velvet, and just before sleep, he understood. Sleep isn't switching off. It's allowing everything to pass through that pinhole until even clarity gently fades into stillness. On a rainy morning, droplets danced over the hole, noisy outside. The novice asked, "What if the scene's messy?" The teacher taped a secondary frame around the hole, tight shutter. When storms rage outside, close the aperture. Protect exposure and your sensor. In a day full of noise, shrink your focus to 1 line. Double your exposure to 15 minutes. Add a filter. Don't try to capture wide shots in the storm. When the novice felt tempted to change his view mid-exposure, the teacher nodded toward the undeveloped film. You don't switch films mid-exposure, unless you're doubling. Focus is shooting the roll fully before opening. At midday's bustle, he handed a tiny velvet box. All stray thoughts? Write 1 word per slip and drop them in here. At day's end, develop that box. Don't develop in the dark. Before departing the attic, the teacher peeled from the wall the silvered sheet he had exposed, barely visible, a few soft smudges. Like a shy secret's faint imprint. This is the best picture. It reminds you peace doesn't need vividness. You only need to know that in the darkroom, it still runs. All day, you've narrowed your aperture for focus. At night, you've opened it for blur. Peace is like that pinhole glow, not flashing, but enough to let a tiny universe fit inside this little room. From that day on, at his desk, the novice stopped waiting for quiet before working. He created his darkroom, taped the screen edge, set up his view tube, wrote his focal phrase, and at night, he didn't chase sleep. He simply placed his internal screen on his forehead, counted 7-11, and let the day's sharpest edges gently dissolve into the blur of rest. Story 17. The study and the index card drawer. On a dry afternoon, light filtered through frosted library windows, tracing rectangles across the wooden floor like silent shelves. The scent of paper, worn brown covers, and oak filled the room with an orderly sense of time. The teacher pushed forward a wooden cabinet full of catalog cards, drawers thick, brass handles worn to a gentle glow. Today, he said, we learn with cards, not bells. He opened a drawer at random. Inside, rows of stiff cards displayed classification numbers, titles, authors, and a small green dot in the corner. Like an eye watching, he took a blank card and wrote in pencil, one single question. Placing it at the drawer's front, he explained, focus begins by asking for the right book, not trying to hold the whole library. Then he handed the novice a stamp reading, currently reading, and said, "Stamp this on the card when you start your session. It tells your mind you have a loan slip. It stops the urge to open other drawers." He positioned a heavy desk lamp horizontally so its light formed a narrow beam just wide enough to hold the open notebook. While edges faded into darkness, "The lamp is your boundary," he said. "The day stays outside. Your work stays inside. If the light is too broad, close it. If too tight, raise it. Don't work under a generic glow." Then came the three-step librarian's ritual. Opening a work session just like in a reading room. Withdraw the card. Write your single question at the top of the page and note 3 small directions on what to search, for example. Sentences for intro. Examples. Conclusion. Mark the path. Draw a narrow left-hand margin titled Procrastination. When a stray thought appears, an email, a worry, don't engage. Write a keyword in that margin and slide your eye back to focus, as if placing that book on a return cart. Switch on lamp. Set a timer for 22 to 28 minutes, a reading slot. Place both feet firmly on the floor, as if anchoring a cart. Do 3 breathing cycles of 2 seconds in, 1 hold, 5 out, to clear mental dust, then read. Write. Compute what lies before you. If hallway noises drifted in, the teacher taught how to soft close the door, gently tap the desk edge. Whisper, in, and return your gaze to the line. A tiny gesture, but it's your internal quieting press of the reading room door. The novice saw how the currently reading card under his hand-made distractions seem illegitimate. They were simply books not checked out. When the reading slot ended, the teacher did not send him to another. Instead, he had him return the card, stand, walk the length of the shelves with eyes grazing the book spines. Drink water. Then write. Done. Remaining. On the page's bottom, a receipt so next time he'd open the right slot. You preserve your flow not by reading fast, the teacher said, but by returning each book to its proper slot. When the novice's mind tempted him to open 10 new tabs, the teacher pulled another drawer and took out a red, "Do not access" card, saying, "Stick this on any postponed idea in your procrastination column. Add the label, 'Don't open until the session ends.' Everyone needs a gentle gatekeeper." At the work's toughest point, mid-session fatigue, the teacher produced a trio of markers, a paper clip on the current sentence, a ribbon tied to the pen, and a folded corner on the page. "These 3 markers tether you to your place," he said. "They're your lifeline to the exact shelf where you stand." Then, he introduced the drawer countdown. Draw 10 small boxes on the desk edge. Each represents 1 minute. Every minute you write even a single character. Mark 1 box. If you lose focus or drift, leave a box blank. At session's end, look at your pattern, not to shame yourself, but like a librarian recounting inventory. 3 blanks today. Tomorrow, let's build the wall back. In the evening, the teacher turned off the main lights, leaving only the small reading lamp at its lowest, drawing the curtain like a hush over the room. "Sleep is the ritual of closing the study," he said. He handed the novice a tiny wooden cart. "Pack tomorrow's 3 light tasks, tomorrow 8:30, tomorrow 10 o'clock, tomorrow 1400, and stamp, 'Due' on tomorrow's card." He smiled. The mind loves appointments. Without one, It stands at the door wanting the room reopened. His bedtime 4-step ritual. Stow the books. Write tomorrow's 3 tasks. Place them in the cart. Push it into its corner, to tell your brain it's covered. Dim the lamp. Reduce the light to a thin ring of gold, so your eyes sink gently into darkness. Index breath. Breathe in 3. Hold 2. Exhale 5, counting down from 30 to 0. Each number dims a shelf. At 20, tongue releases. At 10, shoulders drop. At 5, eyelids close like glass panes shutting. Return the key. Whisper, study closed, and click off the lamp. If a thought tries to crack the door, the teacher advised, hand it a reservation slip. Whisper the idea and file it in your procrastination column for tomorrow. For noisy nights, he suggested an audio floor of calm sounds, rain, fan, murmur, to tile the hallway softly. For thoughts that unshelved and refused to stay closed, he told him to fold the page mid-sentence as a deliberate bookmark, signaling the mind there's space yet to return. The novice tested this quietly. When sleep arrived, it wasn't intrusion. It was the gentle nod from a librarian. The next morning, a sudden bustle in the corridor, notifications, tasks, drew the novice to chase them. The teacher gently steered his hand back to the card cabinet and said, "Place this red priority card atop today's deck. Every decision goes through it first. If it belongs, stamp it currently reading. If not, add it to the procrastination cart." You don't dismiss noise with force. You route it with process. At lunch, when energy sagged, the teacher offered warm water and a banana. The library takes lunch, so do people. That sustains the lamp. Later in the day, the novice asked, "What if I knock over the card drawer?" Unfazed, the teacher slowly sorted them by initial number, not by mood. In chaos, restart the order, not with ego. Focus is cueing the right shelf. Sleep is closing the right time. From then on, each morning, the novice retrieved the precise card, positioned the lamp to outline his small world, entered the reading slot, with the sense that everything essential had already waited there for him. And each night, before pulling the quilt up, he wheeled the little cart to its corner, closed the lamp, exhaled 3, 2, 5, and he came to understand softly and clearly, peace is not an empty library, but a study with a librarian who knows when to open a drawer, when to dim the light, and always remembers to place the one single question card back at the front before stepping away. Story 18. The Plain Bench and the Wood Grain. Morning light in the temple's woodworking studio revealed particles of pine dust drifting like mist through the air. The teacher placed 3 simple tools on the workbench: an L-square ruler, a soft 2B pencil, and a fine-toothed handsaw. From under the bench, he retrieved an aged plane, its surface darkened by seasons of oil use. "Today," he said, "we learn through grain, not moonlight." He set before the apprentice a rough board, its edges uneven, its grain slanted like lines of Earth's own nodes. He didn't allow the apprentice to saw just yet. Instead, he pointed to the ruler. "Measure twice, cut once. Focus begins at the mark." With a delicate tap, he flattened the pencil tip and drew a faint line a curve's width from the board's edge, the wood the saw blade would remove. Don't cut into the blade's path. The portion you sacrifice belongs outside the task. Your daily kerf is the skippable distractions, web pages, curiosities. You draw the line so you remember there is a real width being taken. He clamped the board in a vise. Clamp is boundary. Without it, the saw slips. Without boundary, your mind slips. Handing over the saw, he guided the first strokes, 3 light back strokes toward himself to establish the cut. Then the forward push. Those first 3 strokes are the ritual. Write 3 tiny bullet points before entering the main work. The saw sang with each clean stroke. Sawdust falling like a golden rain. The teacher counted out breathing rhythm, in for 4, out for 6. Sinking breath to each push and pull. Keep your eyes on the mark, not the saw. The moment your eyes fix on the teeth, your hand trembles. Focus on your concrete target, not the buzzing distractions. Mid-cut, the saw wedged as the grain tilted. The teacher inserted a thin shim between the cut, and the saw resumed its smooth path. When the work gets stuck, add a shim. Note a keyword in your notebook. Shift your posture. Sip water. Don't force deeper out of frustration. After the cut, the sawed edge was rough. The teacher placed the board on a shooting board and guided the plane over it. Plane with the grain. Lift at the end to avoid tear out. Similarly, finish your work gently, close with a remaining, and step away. No yank at the tail end. The plane sang softly. Wood shavings curled into delicately scented ribbons. Under his palm, the board's surface became satin smooth. 1 full work session, he explained, follows the MMSP cycle. Measure, write your goal. Mark, note 3 steps. Saw, work for 20 to 25 minutes. Plane, polish for 5 minutes. Jot, remaining. 3 cycles make a full day. He then handed 2 wooden boards with matching mortise and tenon joints. The apprentice pressed them together, but they didn't fit. A gentle tap with a wooden mallet and the joint clicked into place. Apply the right pressure at the right spot. Focus isn't about strength, it's about accuracy. He advised using chalk in the mortise to reveal friction points before finalizing tight fitting. Whenever the joint is rough, frustration, uncertainty, mark it, then plane precisely. Don't plane the whole board. Once together, the teacher applied a thin layer of wood glue. Clamped gently, applying just enough pressure. Glue needs even, gentle pressure, not too much. Focus works the same. Compress just enough. Rest regularly. Too much force causes cracks. He set a 30-minute timer, the glue time, and offered sandpaper of increasing grit, 120 to 240. Never switch to a new task in the middle. Change grits. Start with saw. End with plane. Middle with sanding. Slow, small progress anchors direction. As noon sunlight dried his throat, the teacher offered water and a slice of apple. Water is oil, natural sugar is spark. Without them, the machine seizes. Drawing the curtain, he reduced glare. Glare distorts grain. Dim the glare, preserve clarity. When wood fibers split against the grain, he said, flip the board. Change your approach if life's grain runs rough, reduce tasks. Slow down, don't fight the grain. By late afternoon, he unclamped the join and wiped away excess glue. With a soft cloth, he polished the joint and smiled. A living joint at its best. End your session like that. Wipe clean, done, remaining. Then step back. At night, He turned off the workshop lights, leaving only a small lamp. The wood bench glowed warmly. Sleep is the drying process, he said. You cannot rush drying or you crack the wood. Then he guided the apprentice through his 4-step night tenon ritual. Dry run. Sit at bed's edge and write 3 tenons for tomorrow tasks. Then note the first minute detail, 10-15 minutes step. This is a dry fitting in mind so ideas don't intrude at midnight. Apply glue, lie on your side. Hand on belly. Breathe 5-2-7, in 5. Hold 2, out 7, for 10 cycles. Whispering, just enough, on each exhale. Like brushing a thin layer of glue, not too thick. Place clamps. Visualize 3 C clamps at your brow, jaw, and shoulders. On each exhale, tighten a notch, not painful, just gentle. At minute 15, the tongue relaxes, shoulders drop, and the clamps hold themselves. Let it dry. Count backward 60 breaths as 60 minutes of clamp time. If you lose track, keep going. If a thought leaks in like excess glue, use your mental, damp cloth. Note 3 words in your bedside notebook and fold it over the edge. Cleaning motion stops the drift. Night isn't for planing, he said, it's for press and dry. Sometimes damp drafts delayed the drying. The apprentice felt an urge to over-tighten. The teacher said, over-tightening leaves clamp marks. Stressing the mind leaves furrows. Instead, warm the joint, wrap the belly. Switch to 6 to 8 breathing to warm up. The rest is best left to time. When a joint felt loose, he didn't criticize. He gently reassembled, added a shim, glued, clamped again. When discipline slips, don't shame yourself. Add a shim. Set smaller deadlines. Shorter goals. People, unlike wood, can self-correct. Once, a crack appeared in the board. The apprentice panicked. The teacher filled it with wood filler. Sanded it smooth. Cracks show where we need care. Filling with care is the day's learning. Embedding fill in the night for morning's smoothness. As the crickets replaced the plane's song, the teacher tapped the joint with the mallet. Day, measure. Mark, saw, plane, night, apply, clamp, dry. Peace is not flawless wood. It's working quietly with the grain, knowing what to remove, what to hold, what to wait for. From that day on, the apprentice reached for his square, not a browser. He drew curved lines, marked 3 bullet steps, performed the ritual saw strokes, and sought exactly the piece before him. And each night, he didn't attempt to finish you. Instead, he brushed just enough layer on his breathing, clamped his focus 3 places, and counted to 60 until his insides made a very small sound. The sound of a perfect joint closing, not of wood, but of a day fit just right. Story 19. The Stone Arch and the Keystone. On a chilly morning, dew lay on the courtyard like freshly mixed mortar. The teacher led his pupil to a plot beside a moss-covered wall, where wedges of green stone lay waiting, and an inverted wooden frame, like a ladder turned upside down, stood ready, its plumb line swaying gently beneath. Today, the teacher declared, we learn through the arch, not the wind. He gave the apprentice a chalk line and wooden mallet, pointing to an arch drawn faintly on the ground. An arch stands by channeling force toward the center. Focus is the same. Choose your keystone, and let everything else bear its weight toward that point. With a snap, He marked a bold arc in deep green chalk on the ground. Then he placed the plumb line at the arch's center, letting the lead drop exactly to its focal point. 3 steps for a day. He taught. Snap the line, which means writing a single sentence as your session's purpose. Set the imposts, lay the first 2 stones at the arch's base, your opening steps. And finally insert the keystone, locking the structure into unity. They began laying the imposts. The teacher applied a thin layer of mortar, placed the first wedge stone at a slight angle, and tapped it gently until the tap sounded firm instead of dull. The apprentice followed on the opposite side but placed the stone just slightly off. The teacher did not scold. He flicked the chalk line back into position and said, "When it's off track, pull it back to the line. In your day-to-day, stray thoughts are the displaced wedge. Bring them back with a small act. Read your goal aloud. Tap your pen on paper. Exhale longer. Just 3 taps bring you back." Gradually, the stones rose on both sides, all leaning toward the center. Excess mortar curled outward into delicate pale ribbons. "Don't scrub it clean too soon," the teacher cautioned. "Mortar needs a bit of spill over to seal properly. The same goes for work, small edges won't hurt. Cleaning too early breaks the bond. Only clean after the keystone is placed." Midway, the apprentice grew eager to place the keystone since the arch seemed nearly complete. But the teacher held his hand. "Not enough stones yet. Acting early can make the arch collapse." He then inserted 2 wooden shims above the imposts to hold the arch's open shape temporarily. A metaphor. In your work, when cannot finish a thought fully, insert support like a margin note to hold your place. It's not delay, the teacher said. It's preserving tension. When both rows drew nearly together, the teacher handed him the keystone, a heavier, inverted V-shaped block. The apprentice held it with both arms. Feeling its weight, the teacher said, "Stand as the plumb line stands, centered, focused." He paced his breathing, in for 4, out for 6, letting that rhythm steady his heart as he raised the keystone and eased it into place. The moment it clicked within its space, the arch spoke in a deep, resonant tone that echoed through stone and wood. The teacher tapped its face with the pencil, tack, and said, "Now is when you close the session." He told the pupil to write, remaining, below the arc's outline. Fix the keystone, and the frame can withdraw. Together they removed the wooden form's wedges slowly. The teacher reminded, "Release support gently. Sleep is the night form. Don't shut the day abruptly. Withdraw piece by piece." As the frame slid free, the stone arch stood complete and silent. Its shadow cast a gentle half-lid on the ground. The teacher smoothed residual mortar, sprinkled fine sand at the base, and said, "An arch doesn't defy gravity, it works with it. Focus isn't battling life, it funnels your work toward its keystone." Later that afternoon, the teacher showed an unfinished arch nearby, gaps. No keystone yet, and said, "Some days look like this. Don't build 2 arches at once. You only need the form for the second arch, 1 focal word to start tomorrow. For today, close at the keystone of the first." He explained sleep using the same arch language. Sleep is the nighttime form release. He taught a 4-step nighttime ritual called plumb mortar form release. Plumb. Sit at bed's edge with the torso centered. imagining the plumb line hanging in your chest. Breathe 4-2-6 for 10 cycles so your inner line stands straight. Mortar. Lie on your side. Hand on your belly as if applying warm mortar. Breathe 5-7, gingerly, gluing your body into peace. Form. Envision a wooden frame embracing your head, jaw, shoulders. With each exhale, imagine it lowering one notch, gently securing your focus points. Release. Count downward from 30, each count releases one wedge. At 20, your tongue relaxes. At 10, your shoulders drop. At 5, eyelids close like a completed arch meeting. At 0, the sleep arch stands on its own. If an intrusive thought wedges in, he advised, don't yank at it. Fill surrounding space with a quick margin note, e.g., tomorrow 8 a.m. call A, then release the wedge. Words are your sealant. On nights when humidity slowed the mortaring, the apprentice felt restless. The teacher offered a blanket. Instead of tightening, warm the joint. Shift to 6-8 breathing. Let time do the work. When the arch's joint loosened slightly over time, the teacher gently reset it, added a shim of wood, glued and clamped anew. When structure loosens, don't blame, add support, tighter deadlines, smaller goals. Unlike stone, we can self-adjust. Another time, a chip appeared in the softened mortar on a stone edge. The apprentice fretted. The teacher filled the chip with putty, smoothed it flat. Mistakes show where attention is needed. Where you mend, strength grows. Instead of perfect, embrace repair. As crickets replaced carving echoes, the teacher brushed the arch with coconut fiber whisk. Dust settling like soft mist. A new moon hung over the arch like a silver hairpin. Day, snap line, set imposts, place keystone. Night, center your mind. Warm your focus, set your form, release piece by piece. Peace isn't a wall without gaps. It's an arch that knows how to channel force toward its center, and the patience to let the mortar dry. From that moment, the apprentice no longer rushed into work. He snapped his chalk line, wrote his one sentence, placed 2 opening steps like imposts, worked patiently to the summit, tapped the keystone, wrote his remaining. At night, he felt the plumb line in his chest, breathed warmth across the joint of his worry, lowered the form gently, withdrew wedge after wedge, until he heard one small reverberation, the sound of his inner keystone settling and holding tight. And like every stone arch that ever stood, his focus stood firm on its own. Story 20: The Forge and the Art of Tempering Steel. On a chilly morning, behind the temple, there was a small forge roofed with old corrugated metal. The smell of coke mixed with damp iron, like a rough melody waiting to be arranged. The master pushed open the heavy wooden door, hung his leather apron on the hook, and placed a short square bar of steel on the anvil. Like an unfinished intention, beside it sat the bellows, iron tongs, a round-faced hammer, a bottle of amber-colored quenching oil, and a small magnet. Today we learn through fire and steel, the master said, not through words. He scooped coal into the furnace, lit it, and pumped the bellows in steady rhythm, as if blowing breath into a black lung. The coal slowly shifted from black to cherry red, then to blazing orange, and finally to a glowing yellow. The light reflected across his face, and the lines of his skin looked like old hammer marks. He clamped the steel bar, held it into the fire until it turned the color of a ripe persimmon, and touched the magnet to it. The magnet fell, no longer clinging. The master nodded. It has passed the Curie point. He explained, steel loses its magnetism, just as the mind lets go of clinging. To focus, the first step is to pass through the loss of attraction. Breathe in for 4 counts. Breathe out for 6 counts. Repeat for 30 cycles, just like pumping the bellows, until the little distractions no longer stick. He set the bar on the anvil. The hammer dropped with a steady rhythm, in, out, firm but not loud. Strike the right spot, with the right force, at the right rhythm. Do not hammer harder just to show strength. Each blow lined up like ruled lines guiding a pen. While striking, he spoke. One work session is like one heat cycle. Heat, forge, adjust, rest, quench, temper. Heating is the opening ritual, writing a goal sentence so short that nothing else can cling to it. Forging is 20 to 25 minutes of focused work on one paragraph. One spreadsheet, one algorithm. Adjusting is rotating the workpiece a quarter turn, reading back, fixing the wrong edge, tapping down the bumps, for 5 minutes. Resting is returning the piece to the furnace until the color evens out, walking for 3 minutes. Drinking water, looking into the distance. Quenching is cooling one specific worry by dropping it into oil. Write it in the margin. Like, call at 9 o'clock tomorrow, and then let it go. Tempering is lowering the heat, sit for 2 minutes. Breathing in for 4. Holding for 7, breathing out for 8, so that flexibility returns before the next cycle. 3 cycles like this are enough for one session. He handed the hammer to the boy, telling him to hold it like holding a bird, firm, but not squeezing. The hammer touched the anvil with a steady tack, and scales flaked off like old excuses falling away. The master did not tell the boy to sweep them away immediately, but to collect them in a corner. Scales are like pointless browsing, excuses, or the urge to open new tabs. Collect them in a small, scale column on the side. Make a mark each time one falls, and count them afterward instead of hating them. If you are working along the right grain, the marks will grow fewer. If they grow many, do not strike harder, lower the heat. Turn the piece, and exhale longer. The fire cracked. Sparks flew like burning words. The billet stretched into a blade, thinning. The master reminded, watch the color, not the sparks, like watching the goal, not the noise. When shaping the tip, he told the boy to forge in a gentle S-curve, so that the grain aligned properly. The boy struck too fast, and the blade warped. The master stopped him, pushed the steel back into the furnace, and said, when the head is hot, let it rest, do not force it cold, or it will crack. When stuck, rest for 60 seconds, walk slowly. Drink water, not push for 10 more minutes. When you return, light taps will fall into place. He showed the boy a smith's trick, placing the blade on the anvil, striking once in the exact spot. The ringing tone changed like a bell signaling the seam had closed. Focus has that sound too, the moment the pen moves without the chatter in the head. He drew the blade across the whetstone. The steady scraping sounded like reins being drawn on a horse. This is adjustment. 5 clean minutes to turn excess into shape. Do not skip it, or quenching will crack. Then came the part beginners always loved, quenching. The master lifted the blade, now glowing dark straw yellow, and lowered it into the oil. The smell of burning oil rose rich, and soft plumes of smoke floated upward. Quenching is not extinguishing, he said. It is guiding heat into a stable environment. When you worry, throw it into the oil of writing, tomorrow, 9 o'clock, and it is done. Do not plunge your hand into the boiling water of panic. The smoke cleared. The blade darkened, with a faint blue sheen like a fish's eye. The boy was mesmerized. The master reminded, "It is not finished yet. Freshly quenched steel is brittle, strike it hard, and it will shatter. It must be tempered. Place the blade back into gentle heat until the color runs straw to purple. That is when flexibility appears." Work is the same. If all day you only quench, release worries, without tempering, softening, you will break from your own strictness. He showed the boy a head tempering ritual for the busy. 3 cycles of the 4-7-8 breath. Relaxing the shoulders, closing the eyes for 45 seconds, like laying the blade across low heat, just enough to begin the next round without breaking. Throughout the session, the master never once said, "Try harder." He only pointed out small things. Grip the tongs 1 joint deeper. Rotate the workpiece every 3 strikes. Listen to the color instead of staring at the flame. Brush on a little borax when welding 2 edges. Borax is the white that fuses 2 pieces of language. By noon, he let the forge breathe, served the boy a bowl of hot broth, and said, "This is oil for humans." He pointed to a wooden board on the wall, carved with the words, "Cycle 1, Cycle 2, Cycle 3, Rest, Quench, Temper." Like a daily forging calendar. Following it, the boy found that the noise of the world outside seemed like wind against a forge door tightly shut. By evening, the master tidied the forge. Coals still glowed red. The finished blade rested on a wooden block like a closing sentence placed on a shelf. "Now we learn to sleep by tempering," the master said, and taught a 3-layer ritual called bellows, or quench. Bellows. Sit on the edge of the bed. Pump the diaphragm like bellows. Breathing in for 4 counts. Out for 6 counts. 30 rounds. Imagine each exhale is dimming a flame in the head, until the tiny magnet of worry no longer pulls. Or, lie on your side. Place your hand over the lower belly as if placing ore into a warm furnace. And count backward from 40 to 0. Each number is 1 scale falling away. At 30, the jaw loosens. At 15, the shoulders release. At 5, the eyelids drop like the lid of the furnace closing gently. Quench, instead of putting out the mind with the glow of a phone. Drop the worry into the oil of words. Write 3 notes for tomorrow. Close the notebook like sealing the oil barrel. And breathe the 4-7-8 rhythm 5 times to temper the body. If thoughts flare like sparks, he said, do not throw the hammer into the furnace. Just cover it with a damp cloth. Repeat 1 word softly on each exhale, like cool, so the fire has no wind. If the mind feels too rigid from too much quenching, add 1 more round of gentle tempering. Place warmth on the belly or take a warm shower. Steel in sleep is not quenched steel, it is tempered steel. The master said, on rainy nights, when the roof drummed and the boy startled awake, the master placed the magnet in his hand. Test it. He touched it to his forehead. And if thoughts still clung, he returned to 30 more cycles of 4-6 breathing. When the pull was gone, he continued counting. In the morning, if cracks still lingered in yesterday's words, the master mixed iron powder, a small lesson of the day. Write a line. Do not heat without tempering first. Brush it into the gap, and sand it flat. A repaired seam in the right place is stronger than the original. He said. One evening, the boy asked, "What if I must forge in strong wind?" The master turned the forge away from the draft, set up a shield, lowered the fire one notch, and said, "The wind is not the enemy, the wind is the condition. The process is your friend, heat evenly. Work one cycle at a time. Rest briefly. Quench at the right spot. Temper long enough. Focus is not heavy hands. It is the right rhythm. Sleep is not putting out the flame. It is letting the heat sink deep into the steel." That night, when the boy lay down, the bellows inside him turned gently. The fire dimmed. The magnet of worry no longer pulled. 3 notes for tomorrow lay like 3 steel bars on the table. Somewhere between the count of 20 and 19, he heard a low, steady hum, the sound of a freshly quenched blade cooling in the dark, not regretful, not showing off its edge, only becoming flexible with the night, and by day. From then on, whenever he opened his notebook, he did not rush harder. He did evenly. He wrote one short goal until the magnet of distraction stopped pulling. He struck at the right point. For the full cycle, he rested with walking steps, quenched worries into the oil of words, tempered his body with breath, and each session stood firm like a blade that knows its task, cutting clean, never chipping, always remembering to rest so it would not break. Do you see? From the sound of the wind through bamboo, to the rhythm of the hammer in the forge, every story repeats one simple truth: peace is not far away. It is in the way we set our eyes, place our hands, and pace our breath. In the day, a small frame, one task, one anchor. In the night, a wider frame, longer breath, permission to fall fully. No apps or complicated secrets are needed, just a small ritual to begin, a small step to close, and a few warm breaths to entrust sleep. If today you carry only one sentence, let it be this: I choose one clear task for the day, and one steady breath for the night. Thank you for walking with me through this journey. If you found it helpful, please subscribe, hit the bell to catch the next episode, and share this video with someone who needs a peaceful sleep or a focused day. Comment below with the part of the story that touched you most, and the ritual you will try tonight. I read every line and truly want to hear your journey. May your day hold just enough focus, and your night enough rest. See you in the next episode.